Well met. This has been Broad, and you're watching Born to be
Cosmo.
Oh, snap.
Welcome to Born to be Cosmo, a twice monthly podcast where we discuss all things Snap. I'm joined by hosts extraordinaire NateWolfe and ZombiesGoNomNom, and I'm very excited to introduce a very special guest, longtime Hearthstone content creator, recent Marvel Snap convert, infinite grinder, the man with the voice, and our good friend, Mr. LeeAcer. Lee, welcome to the pod.
We know each other. He's a friend from work.
We do.
And we're really thrilled to have you on.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the invite. I am super stoked to be here.
And boy, did you choose an opportune week to join us, because I'm going to be real with you guys here. I really struggled to create this week's agenda for the show, because if I would have included everything that I wanted to include, I bet we could have talked for 5 hours. And at a certain point, there has to be a line drawn. But before we jump into it, we do have a few things that we want to take care of first. Most importantly, Lee, why don't you tell our audience and us a little bit about yourself?
Well, what can I say? I've always very much been into card games my entire life. Well, when people were playing Magic, I was playing Blood Wars.
I remember Blood Wars. You just outed your age.
So, but I played everything from Solitaire to Crazy Eights to Mr. President to everything, and I don't know. I love card games. I can't stress that enough.
Do you remember the first Marvel card game in the 90s, Overpower? Was that what it's called? I think it was.
Very, very briefly. It's been a long time.
Mm-hmm. Lee, I always know that it's like time for me to leave work because I get a pop-up on my phone like at 4:30 p.m. every day. It's like, Lee is streaming. And I was like, yes, it's almost time to go home.
I'm so glad I can be your alarm.
Positive association.
I'm so excited to have you on the show, Lee. I've always enjoyed your Hearthstone content. I enjoy your Snap content. I like your your shorts on your YouTube shorts are fantastic.
Thank you very much. Yeah, those have been doing very well actually. So I'm pretty happy with those. And the Snap ones seem to be picking up. But yeah, I played Hearthstone for a very long time, pretty much since it came out, and just recently stopped because I'm just plain and simply I'm just not enjoying it anymore. And Snap has my attention, and I really, really love the game.
Yeah. How do you get your voice to be so like silky smooth? I'm really jealous.
Well, what I do is every morning I get 2 sheep. They get sacrificed. I drink 3 eggs, get a little bit of olive oil, and then just pray to God every 5 minutes. And then there you are.
I thought you were going to say you're using a voice mod.
So our own electric sheep better steer clear from Canada for a little while. Well, that's great. I know that switching content, especially with card games, can be really tough, and I know it's something that Zombies struggled with and stressed over initially, and you're going through that transitional phase, but trying to hang out when you're live, I have noticed the numbers creeping northwards every day, so I hope that's not just my empirical observation, what the metrics are showing as well.
No, they have been getting better. No, yeah. it has been getting better. I was getting a bit of a bump in Hearthstone for a bit when you guys and the wild community at large had found me. So, but it was also slowly starting to tank because I just wasn't established enough, I don't think. And one of the big reasons why I decided to move over to Snap was just I think there was a lot more room to grow and to be found. And the numbers are slowly starting to indicate that. I mean, even on YouTube where, my numbers aren't like in the thousands or anything, but a video that's getting like 200 views, for me, that's good. You know, whereas before I was getting like maybe 35 or 40 if I was lucky. So
yeah, it all takes time, but that's great to hear. There's some forward momentum. It's always a nice.
There is a little bit, yeah. I mean, some days are better than others, but that's just the reality of streaming. So
for sure, 100%.
I mean, we have a soft spot for Hearthstone content creators because that's where we come from originally, and some of us are still invested in the game and really wanting to make sure that our long-standing friends are successful no matter what content they choose to engage with, be it Snap, variety, whatever. So for those on here that are born to be wild regulars, or if you're just here because you want to hear us talk about Snap, if you haven't checked out LeeAcer, I think after tonight you will agree that he's one to watch.
Oh yeah, 100%. And for the people, so we record this podcast like live on Twitch, and the videos go out to YouTube. But we have audio versions on the podcast feed as well. So I do want to tell people, if you're listening to the audio version of this, I do recommend watching the video because we'll have images up on the screen. But right now, Lee's info is up on the screen. So if you want to check out Lee's content, twitch.tv/LeeAcer, so LeeAcer, and then youtube.com/LeeAcer, LeeAcer. So I want to make sure I get that in. I'm a big Lee fan over here. Every time, you know what? Ever since we did the Syrup hero portrait, like you've had a soft spot in my heart. So no,
the one thing that I am grateful for is finding you guys, and that's probably one of the best things, if not the best thing, that I got out of Hearthstone. So I'm very, very happy to have found you guys and become friends, and I look forward to many more years of friendship.
Can I piss everyone off real quick? The Hearthstone, the wild Hearthstone community is so much better than the Marvel Snap community. The Snap community, the Snap people are so toxic. Oh my God. I'm not talking about you guys like in stream, but like every time I play somebody, I have to like instant mute, because if I see one more Miss Marvel, like thumbs up, I'm losing, I'm confident. Like I'm about to launch my computer out the window, and I just I got triggered so hard.
Oh yeah, they're
zombies. You're fired.
Like their emotes. People like their emotes, don't they?
It's probably my fault for taking them personally, but like it's
that one. No, how do you not take the Miss Marvel one purposely, like, or personally? Like,
there's no accident when people are hitting that one,
and somehow they manage to rapid fire them, and it's just.
I know. I swear, I've seen some people. I'm like, do you have like a program for this? How are you hitting it so fast?
Oh my gosh,
those are the real APM gamers.
Yeah,
no, gamers. You know what? And it's in chat, and I think Blutrane told me. I think the one that everybody I think is considered safe, right, is the fist bump.
Yeah, fist bump's cool, or the Spider-Man point when you do the same thing. Those are chill,
nice,
right? Like
every time I see the Spider-Man, like. I'll like verbally shut up. It's just, you know what it is? Like I'm getting old and I just have no sense of humor anymore. It's very selective, right?
You're ladder grinding and you just don't want to be bothered with it, So
oh my gosh. It's
speaking.
Anyways.
Speaking of laddering and grinding, Nate, I think you have some news to share with us.
I'm excited. I get to do this first. All right, cool. Yeah.
Oh snap!
Yeah, so I hit Infinite this week. Was very excited. I had to earn my chops to be on the show, right? I couldn't be the only one that hadn't done it. So, anyways, it was a grind. Oh my goodness! So if you guys remember the last episode, I don't know if y'all watched or whatever, but last month I ended at like rank 75, I think, and I started the month at rank I think it was 45. And so I had to climb from 45 to 100. Holy,
it's like a double climb.
Yeah,
it's like a double climb.
It was crazy. I will say the ladder update where like you cross over the border and you get the 5 extra ranks is super cool. That really helped me a lot. I know a lot of people this month were like kind of struggling early in the month in the 70s, and that part wasn't too bad for me. But it's just like Hearthstone, right? 95 to 100 took me like 3 days. and the rest of it was kind of gradual, but it was so funny because early in the month, like, and I think I said in the last episode, like, oh, you know what, you guys are all stressed out. I'm just having fun. I'll just have fun. Just try to do my dailies, and if I win some ranks, cool. And then you get to this magic point that's like, I hit like 75. Oh, I hit 80. It's like, oh, I'm farther than I have been. Oh, you keep going. Mm-hmm. Hit 85. I'm like, well, we're going to do the thing. And then every single game was like super stressful. And then I remember there was one, we did some co-op. I did some stuff on my own. I ended up one night at 98. And then I couldn't sleep. I played a bunch of Thanos, right? So I think the struggle for me has been like, what decks do I play? I don't have the cards. I'm not paying a bunch of money for this stuff. And I've slowly been able to collect the cards that I needed. And what I played mostly up until about rank, I don't know, like 80 or so, was the Sandman ramp deck. And I really liked it. It was just fun. It's turn 3 Electro, turn 5 Sandman, and then you ideally like Doom and Odin or whatever it is. It's versatile a little bit.
Got Leech.
Got Leech, yeah. It got so it has tech cards, right? It's got Wave in case you don't find your Electro. It's got a Shang-Chi because every deck needs a Shang-Chi, right? It's got Leech. It's got a Magneto. So this was really fun, but then I had Thanos pinned, and I finally got enough tokens to get Thanos, and I played Thanos for like, I don't know, the better part of like 2 weeks, and then it freaking got nerfed, right? And the deck was strong. And I remember the day, like we knew that the nerfs were incoming, and I couldn't sleep. Like I'm old and I don't sleep that much anyways, right? But I woke up that day at like, it's like 3 a.m, and I was like, I can't get back to sleep. I'm awake. Oh no, today's the day that the nerfs are going to go through. We don't know what they are yet, but like we know Thanos is getting hit, right? Like I'm going to play, and I want to play with Thanos before he gets nerfed, because I only had him for like 2 weeks. And so I played and I played and I played, and I got up to 98, and then I was like half asleep and I started doing stupid snaps, and then I was back down to like 95, and I was like, oh my God, I just need to stop before I'm back down to like 70. And then I had to go to work, right? And I get off of work, and like the deck is kind of scuffed now. It's still good, but it's different. The space, we'll talk about it later, but it's just not quite the same.
Looking at the data, it's pretty clear what's kind of the one-to-one replacement, but the good deck builders are kind of experimenting with other builds. Unlike the other decks, or the other deck, I should say, singular, the changes to Thanos were meaningful to take it down a peg. The card's still really good, but yeah, definitely the way that we were playing it prior to the nerf is, well, it's just so different.
And the image up on the screen is missing the Quinjet, and that just it fundamentally changed like how the deck worked, and the arrow is kind of like, we experimented with some stuff, and I don't know, but the random factor, I think what happened to me is like the random factor of the stones going into Lockjaw. Like I just hit this string of bad luck, and I'm like, you know what, guys, I'm not playing this anymore. I just like, I'm tired of like playing a Infinity Stone on Lockjaw, and Lockjaw poops out like a different Infinity Stone. Like, forget it. That's not how this is supposed to go. And at that point, like after I had unlocked Thanos, the next card that I pinned was Shuri, and it had just come down a notch, so it was like 3,000, I think. And so I got it, and I was like, you know what? I'll play the Drooler deck. Sorry, everybody who plays this, but this is what I played from whatever it was, like 96, 97 up to Infinity. And it wins games. Most of the ranks I got were from people retreating. And I think one of the things that I really need to work on is like, I need to learn when to snap and when to get out. Because there were so many games that like I should have got out and I didn't, and it cost me. Or I should have snapped early. Because like I have the tendency to like boomer snap, right? And then people just bounce, and like, cool, you get a free point, but like
could have been more.
Yeah. And so there's it's like a whole separate aspect of the game. Lee, I don't know, you have a background in poker, right? There's a whole like mental aspect to this, and
mental thing to it. Yeah, I mean, I played professionally for a few years, and that was my sole job. So this is another reason why Snap was so interesting to me, just because the cube mechanic is just a way to have mind games with your opponent.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But what I think with this month, it's just been it has felt so weird to try and snap or try and gain cubes, because the meta has just been like, you're just always afraid of either getting arrowed or leeched, and that's all it was.
You know what? Well, we'll talk. I have a couple thoughts on arrow, but the last thing I do want to,
nice mind game.
Yeah, there's big time mind games, and I remember Blutrane saying this is your second month of Infinite, right? Or Infinity.
Third.
The first month when you did it, I remember because I was feeling the same way that you were like, oh my God, I just wanted to like cry. And it was like 3 days of trying to go from like 97 to 100. And it was just a slog. I don't know what else to call it. It was grueling. And part of it, it was my first time, whatever. And I hit Legend in Hearthstone a bazillion times. And so I understand, but it's just the mental aspect of it is so taxing that I was exhausted afterwards. And so
it's like a relief. It's like you told it, it's like we accidentally told you 6 months to live. You're not going to die. Like that's the kind of the weight off your shoulders. I mean, it's a little melodramatic, but it does feel palpable, the weight being lifted once it's done.
It does. I do have a question, and this is a noob question, because like I've been playing a lot. I think one of the, you get these daily quests and you have to, again, we'll talk about this later, but right now you get your daily quests and you got to do them on ladder if you want the things, and they don't stack. And so once you're full, it's like, you better do these. And so I've been doing them, but once you're in infinite, like you can't go back down, right? You're like,
no, you can't fall below 100.
Okay.
Yeah. So typically, now when you enter infinite, you enter in at 105.
Oh, okay.
Before you'd enter it in 101, and like I would fall to the 100 floor a lot because I'd like to play things that like I have to clear my quest. Try stuff out. Not worry too much about it. Now this month, a little different. Kind of want to stay north of 105. A lot of people, purposely tank their MMR because of the 100 floor. That's why Agatha farming is so popular. Post infinite, because then when the ladder resets, they start at 70. Their MMR is so low that they're gonna end up playing opponents that are weaker into them. This is the last month where that's going to happen. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we go into the roadmap. But yeah, you don't have to fret. I mean, you're going to reset to 70 unless they change the ladder again. But you're reset to 70.
Well, sweet. I'll be in the same boat as you all. So we got a lot of news. So I want to kind of like move on. But
just before we do, I want you to share your screen grab of your last game.
Yeah. Okay. It was so on brand, right? Because I've got the Cosmo portrait up there, but I've got also like 2 Cosmos in the left and the middle lane, and like that's what won us the game, right? We were playing the cloning bats were in the middle, and the opponent was playing a Patriot deck, and they just kept pumping Patriots in the middle, and we had a Cosmo there, and it was like, they don't care, right? It's an ongoing. But they were telegraphing so hard that they're going to drop an Ultron, but we had priority. So the last turn, we just dropped the Cosmo into that lane, and it was just wah, wah, wah. It was so great. It was like what a great final match of, and it was crazy because I think the one before that was like a 2-cuber, and we were kind of going back and forth, like. We could pull it out, maybe, but
99.8.
And I was like, nope. It's not worth it. And I'd rather lose the 1 than lose the 2.
Yeah.
But this was it was such a great final game, and it was very on brand, and I'm happy. And it's it's been good. Will I do it every month? I don't know. Maybe. I don't. Maybe it depends on if I like the card back. I really liked the one this month, and so I was like, I want that. But I like yellow, and so
next month looks like it's going to be pretty sweet. It's going to be a goose card back with a window. I think like probably I'm speculating the window.
The window is like gold. It's cool.
Yeah.
You know what? I mean, I'll probably do it. I think. I mean, I typically will do it in Hearthstone as well, and this is really the only other game that I play is these 2. And I like being able to kind of alternate back and forth, but it's good to have a goal, and I want to be competitive, and I want to stay, on top of the meta and all that stuff. So it's a good goal. Like, am I going to be upset if I don't get it? Like, I probably not, but I'll probably try for it. I don't know. We'll see.
And we're going to review this, but I think that their goal is to get more people into Infinite and make the Infinite experience a little bit more meaningful, which is, because the problem was the ladder was too grindy for some people, those that just want to hit Infinite, and it wasn't grindy enough for those who want a post-Infinite goal. So I think that as we see it's funny because this is probably a good pivot. But when we review the developer roadmap, it almost feels like they're trying to make Marvel Snap Ladder look a little bit more like Hearthstone's ladder.
I wouldn't like it was a grind. Oh my gosh. Climbing from rank 45 to 100 is like it was a lot.
Yeah, the first infinite climb is always the most challenging, right? Because it's like the biggest you have to push through. And then once you do it the first time, if you want to keep doing it, it's a little bit easier. It's kind of like you mentioned like earlier on in the month. It's similar to like the 11x thing where it's like because you placed high, you don't have to put in quite as much work to get it back.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll see. But I mean, I hear like the early month bottleneck is definitely a thing, right? Because you're just in the same pool of all the other.
It used to be, but this month, who knows what's going to happen? Honestly, just go in expecting the worst, and if it's better than the worst, then you're coming out ahead.
I do feel like I think what was holding me back before, the reason that I didn't even want to try is because I didn't have the card collection. And then I kept going up against
Pool 3 recently, right?
Like, I mean, at that point, like I still was missing Pool 3 cards, and I'm going up against Shuri, and I'm going up against Thanos, and I'm going up against, whatever the meta decks are at the time. And I was like, this feels like a big giant dog turd to have such a limited collection, and then I'm playing people with when I see they've got like inked out Thanoses and inked out Shuris, I'm like, this is like a grinder over here, and I'm a little noob getting stomped, and it just feels bad now that I've got the cards, and I really haven't pumped almost any money into the game. Every once in a while I'll get some, like when they have a good token bundle or something, I'll grab it if it's a good deal, but typically all I'm buying is the battle pass, and so unlocking the cards has been kind of a long journey, but now that I have them, it's like, well, now I don't have an excuse. Like I can compete with everyone else.
For those who haven't finished, maybe a little bit longer of an experience.
Oh, this is talking about dog turds. Well,
who would have thought having cards is a good thing in a card game?
What'd you say, Zombies? People in card games want to get new cards and play them?
I know it's a pretty novel concept.
Yeah, I did the survey this week, and they were like, is there anything else you want to tell us? And I was like, I have never played a game before, a card game, like collectible card game, where the new cards came out and they were inaccessible for half the people. Probably
more than half the people.
You want to play with the cool new thing, and then you can't?
You can't.
That's so backwards. And then they just like double down on it, which I really don't understand it, but like there's a method to the madness, I suppose.
To segue, there was a roadmap that was released by Second Dinner to address some of these concerns: the ladder, the matchmaking, the progression, the grind to get cards. So there is a lot to unpack here. So why don't we pivot and start looking at the roadmap and blog, and start sharing our thoughts on what they got right, what they missed, and maybe where we think possibly they could pivot to make some improvements.
All right. Well, you kick it off. Yeah, we'll start with this coming soon.
Yeah. So basically, on March 17th, on the Discord for Marvel Snap, Second Dinner released their developer roadmap and blog. I believe it was also accessible through the mobile client as well.
Yes, but it was on mobile. I think it's on their website now too.
It's on their website now too. Okay, but definitely Discord was where it dropped first.
Yeah, it always drops first on Discord, and then mobile goes live like 20 minutes later or something.
Got it. That's good to know. So just before we talk about it, just kind of my thoughts. It's clear that the Snap development team follows an agile methodology to software development. For those of you who are in the biz or develop software yourselves, that's probably a term that's quite familiar to you. And the reason why I not to get too inside baseball here, but the reason why I call it out is because in their communication, right, they're very much sharing with us their design philosophy. And I'm not talking about game, I'm talking about just in terms of creating product. And you look at Marvel Snap in its release, it was released MVP, or minimally viable product. the PC client looks like BlueStacks, right? There was no casual mode, very only ranked ladder. And now they're starting to add those features in through a process of iteration, stories, etc. And so the roadmap is very much kind of a way of packaging those terms up as a layperson. I won't talk too much about the development methodology and kind of how it works, but certainly possibly if there's interest in it, can maybe share some of those insights and kind of how it relates to the game on a future episode, or maybe after we're done recording here on the stream. So they broke the roadmap up into 3 sections: coming soon, in development, and in concept. So I'm kind of breaking the order a little bit here. I'm going to read how they've defined those 3 pillars, and then we'll talk about what they're doing in those 3 categories. They were focusing mostly on coming soon, and that's because they define coming soon as items listed in the final phase of development. These features are almost ready to release to players. We're cleaning up, polishing art, squashing bugs. Our quality assurance teams scrape over all the little details to ensure we have as smooth an experience for players as possible. Once features are coming soon, we can start to plan release dates, timelines, and share some insights with players. The team is hard at work putting the finishing touches on a few much anticipated features: the new competitive mode, card acquisition improvements, token shop revamp, ranked mode improvement, and infinite rank revamp. Those are all things that are coming soon. Now, in development, they define as game features that are actively being developed, iterated, and approved upon. Again, that word iteration, a clue to their design philosophy. Our production team dedicates team resources, generates tasks, timelines, and ensures moving forward. Features and systems in this bucket can change dramatically. We might find our initial idea wasn't fun, or we might discover we can achieve our goals in an unexpected way. And then finally, in concept, is defined as having big dreams about what we'd like to bring to the future of Marvel Snap. The first step towards these dreams in turning ideas into concepts through discussions, documentation, and planning. Features currently in the in-concept phase have been initially scoped out, given shape, but not yet have had any engineering or development work done in the game itself. So lots to unpack here. Now, if they worked where I work and they use the term resource in their communication, they probably would be chastised because that's not a very agile term. But I thought they did a good job in defining what coming soon in development and in concept is. So what is coming soon? The first thing is Conquest, a new game mode. Conquest takes the battle mode format you know and love from friendly battles to the next level. In Conquest, players will queue up against other players to face off in battle mode to earn rewards. Winning a series of battles without a loss unlocks tickets to higher leagues against tougher opponents, culminating with Infinity League at the end of each season. Players will battle their way to the top to claim ultimate victory and the best rewards. When you queue up for a Conquest match, you'll start by choosing which league to compete: Proving Grounds, Bronze, Silver, Gold, Vibranium, or Infinite. Proving Grounds is always available to play, but players need the corresponding ticket to access higher tiers. Tickets are earned by winning a league series in the previous tier. For example, winning your Silver series will earn you a gold ticket. Players win a league series by defeating 3 consecutive opponents. I have a lot more to say here. In addition to tickets, the higher league, each victory grants medals that can be used in the Conquest shop to unlock exclusive rewards. There's a brand new Conquest shop every season with new cosmetics, including a seasonal exclusive variant that can only be unlocked in the Conquest shop. We think that battle mode is a super fun way to play Marvel Snap, and Conquest lets you play battle mode whenever you want against the best competition for the best rewards. The team is actively developing Conquest, and we ran our first company-wide playtest last week. We are hoping to release Conquest in June. So that's Conquest mode.
What's different?
What do you guys think?
What's different than the current ladder system?
So it's battle mode, basically.
Yeah, but I'm already is it like
have you tried battle mode before, Nate? It's
yeah, but
different.
I have, but like just playing against a friend, right?
Yeah, so the big thing about this is I really like the battle mode, and the reason I like it so much is I think it's really neat to actually go a few rounds back and forth with
Mhm.
someone rather than just queuing up on ladder. But one of the things I've noticed in doing some content around battle mode, and other creators have noticed this too, is the thing with battle mode is, like you mentioned, you have to have a friend to play it.
Mhm,
And that's well and good, but not everybody has, another friend to play in this game. And those people don't really get to experience the battle mode, which I think is quite unfortunate because it's a lot of fun. And as a result of that, there's a lot less interest in battle mode because that's all it is. It's just for fun, and that's great. But people like that incentive, right? Like part of the reason to like chase something like infinite or the ranks is the rewards they give you, right?
Well, and that's why
Other
you getting a unique card back. Excuse me, getting a unique card back at the end of each month for hitting infinite is like, okay, you've got something to chase, but now we've got to chase like multiple things. Like the carrot on the stick here with like exclusive cosmetics, the best cosmetics,
Mhm.
like you can only get. It's like, oh my god.
Well, the second best, the best cosmetics are still the one you buy at the token shop.
Yeah, yeah.
That is
5,000
true. That is true. What is the special name for them? What do they call them?
Ultimate,
Ultimate
Ultimate.
variants,
Yes, I
yeah.
should know
Yeah.
that. But
Um,
it's just one more thing to chase, and it's like, oh god, I already have no time. Like, I, uh, I mean, I'll partake. I will say that like I really barely use battle mode because like we're all a bunch of like ladder grinders, right? Like, why do I want to play Blutrane in battle mode when we just want to co-op and like climb ladder? I think it'd be cool, like for
You also don't get rewards for doing friendly battle mode, which
Mhm.
like you don't get not variants, you don't get like pass XP, you don't get boosters, whereas they did confirm in this conquest mode you will still be you can do your quests, you can it's basically it treats it like it's a ladder game.
mm,
But I think the whole reason they're doing this is something for the people who want something a bit more competitive, who are kind of. I think there are a lot of people out there. Like, how many years have we had people asking in Hearthstone for a tournament mode in game, right?
for the people who don't have any friends to battle. I'm
Well,
sorry.
mean-
I'm sorry.
It's but it's like
Feel
even if you
attacked.
just gave people a way to matchmake into it, I think the interest in battle mode would really explode because for me, I've actually found it to be more interesting and enjoyable than regular ladder because it's neat how you have to manage for anyone who hasn't played the battle mode, you have each of you and your opponent have 10 health and your cubes represent health. So one cube is one health, and whoever runs out of cubes or health first, they lose. So there's a different level of managing your cubes in that compared to ladder, because like let's say the first game, I'm just kind of scouting for information. Like I'm trying to see what my opponent's playing, get a feel for their deck. So I'm okay, risking it going into the final turn a bit because I want to learn what I'm supposed to expect and how I can capitalize on that. But then once you know what they have and they kind of know what you have, it creates just a very different play experience than I
Yeah.
find on ladder where you don't know what you're going to run into. And it's not going to be everyone's preference, but I know it's certainly like I find it way more fun. And it's been disappointing to me that there just hasn't been really much interest in the mode because there isn't, that carrot on a stick to get people interested. Like what people want on like YouTube content is they want the secret deck that's going to take them to infinite because they want those rewards, right? They want to be able to say, "Hey, I accomplished this." And so that's I think the whole reason we're getting like these exclusive cosmetics in here is cuz they want to put the carrot on the stick. I mean, it's it is, yeah, one more thing. But I do think it's a good thing to have this kind of stuff to actually drive interest because they obviously put a lot of work into battle mode. And right now, yeah, we still see some like community tournaments and those are great. But it feels like they put a ton of work into battle mode and it's really not being, as popular as I think it could be.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to be a great way in the right direction. Now, we don't fully know how all the ticket stuff works. They talked about some of it, but what I think is kind of neat is, in theory, it depends on if they give you like a limited number of tickets a day, or if you have to buy in an entry, or my guess is they're going to,
that's my worry.
I'm hoping that the idea
worry.
is they give you a certain amount of tickets to enter a day for like the base league. I think they did say somewhere you can always enter the base one. I'm not 100% sure, but I think I
remember
read
reading that as well.
Yeah. So what's kind of interesting is, in theory, people could treat that base level Conquest as a more casual mode, because it's the lowest rank, and you can get like a ticket for the next league or whatever, or maybe some medals. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but there's no real stakes there as much. You can do your quests there without having to worry about your ladder rank. So I think maybe in a way this Conquest mode will actually, at least the lower rank of it, will actually give people an alternative to ladder when they just want to clear out some quests without having to worry about playing, to the best of their ability.
Yeah.
Having a non-ladder format to play competitively is a good thing. I know one of the things I like about Magic the Gathering Arena is that they have this mode called Special Events, which is kind of like, if you've played Hearthstone, it's like the Brawliseum, not the heroic one, like the regular stakes.
Okay,
right?
okay.
Kind of like that. Where you can go and play a series of games, and if you do well, then you get paid out. And if you do poorly, you don't. But all of those have one thing in common: they have entry fees. And you're right, it's not clear. So having that option is good. Not knowing how much it's going to cost is bad. So we'll have to wait and see more details for that.
God, I have some trepidation. There is, I don't know. I worry sometimes when they put things behind a paywall. I mean, I don't mind if there's a cosmetic that I really want, or there's a really good deal in the shop for the tokens or whatever. But like, my supplemental income is somewhat limited.
Well, on the subject of paywalls, perhaps we can move on to the next item, the token shop revamp, unless any of you have any final thoughts on Conquest and the new game mode.
I'm looking forward to it. I just, we'll see.
You're
What
worried.
do you think, Lee? I'm curious what you think about this.
I think the Conquest is a neat idea. I just really hope it's not going to be one of those things where it's like, okay, every week we'll give you like 2 or 3 free tickets to enter, and then the rest of them it's like, hey, pay $1.50 to get in.
Dude, this Marvel Snap, it's gonna be like $10 to get in.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry.
Yeah, right.
I'm still living in the year 2000. I forgot about
12. It's gonna be 1,200 gold to get in, right? You can.
It's gonna be something.
Crazy.
That's the only thing that I would worry about. But I did see someone tweeting that you could also stack tickets, so there wasn't any limit to how many tickets you could actually keep for whatever floor that you were on in the Conquest mode.
So if my understanding is correctly, like, okay, I start out in the bronze league or whatever it is, and I beat it, and like, cool, I get a silver ticket. Now I can go in the silver league, and if I go through my silver league and I lose, like, I can't just go through silver league again, right? Like, I got to go through bronze again to get another silver ticket.
They clarified a bit about this. So when you get that ticket, you can choose to go do the silver one, but you also don't have to. Like, if you want to stay and farm up some multiple silver ones, you can do that. You can go back to the other league and you can just do that and farm up the silver. And then each ticket is good for like one run, which is essentially, I don't know if it's 3 games total or until you lose. I don't think it's been very specified how exactly it works.
Okay.
And it sounds like it's still in the earlier stages of I think they have all the concept stuff done for it, but now they're actually working on like getting it thrown together.
But it's essentially like one
immediately.
It's like 1 ticket per run though, right? And so
yes, that is how it works. I'm trying to find it here because they did answer a question about like the about basically what you're asking for. Like, I don't know if they were definitive in saying like how we'll
have more on it later. We've got a bazillion news things to talk about. So if you find it, let us know. But like, yeah.
You want to do the bumper?
Yeah.
This just in.
Breaking news, live from the Daily Bugle. Parker!
Yeah, well, funny the last one was Parker, because this next one is a Parker Yelp if there ever was one. So the token shop revamp. Okay.
I am
gonna
so
read what
glad that I finished Pool 3. That's all I have to say. Oh,
Yeah.
no. You know what? Talking about so we just had the news bumper, right? This goes right along with it.
A crap, mega crap.
There you go.
A treasure if there ever was one.
Really?
Right. So let me read what they wrote before we weigh in. But I think for those that are watching us live, you can probably hear by our tone that we're displeased. Token shop revamp. Token shop is an awesome way to target the cards you want most, but we think we could do it even better. We're dividing the token shop into a few different sections that will allow players to target new and desirable cards faster. We're also revamping the look and feel of the token shop so you can swipe through to see what's new. So, one of the new sections is called Weekly Spotlight. When a new Series 5 card is released, it will be immediately featured in its own section for its first week in Marvel Snap. Once you buy the Weekly Spotlight card, this section will be hidden until the next new card is released. If you want the newest cards at release, here's what you've been waiting for. Except they still cost 6,000 tokens. Sorry, I said no editorialization. Next section, Series 4 and Series 5. This section functions nearly the same as previously, but the only features Series 4 and Series 5 cards. This section will feature a card you don't own from all currently available Series 4 and 5 cards. It rotates every 8 hours. Series 5 cards will be added to the section once they leave the weekly spotlight. So for those who are Pool 3 complete, this is similar to how it functions today.
So isn't this what we already have?
Well, they're removing the ultimate variants. Now, in fairness, this is one thing I think we'll all agree is positive. You won't roll an ultimate variant instead of a Series 4 or 5 card that you're waiting for. Ultimate variants will now get their own section. And it is described as, ultimate variants are some of the most epic variants in the game. We felt they deserve their own section too. We're moving ultimate variants out of the way of seeing Series 4 and 5 cards and into their own rotation for those of you who want to make your decks that much cooler. We're aiming for these changes to make our April patch. So we'll get to this a little bit later, but the one thing that you'll notice is that you've got a section for Series 4 and Series 5 cards. You got a section for newly released cards because everyone says, I want to get excited about the new cards coming out. And you have a section for ultimate variants. But what's conspicuously absent here are the Pool 3 cards. So I'll just say this, and then I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I'm happy that they're taking the ultimate variants out of the Series 4 and Series 5 rotation. That's good. I'll never forget Yada, our friend Yada, who kept rolling. It was like a Namor skin or something as an ultimate variant,
the
like
ultimate
3 times
Namor.
in a row. Yeah, unbelievable. Or people kind of having to like manipulate, looking at the JSON files to like figure out like the optimal way to make the new card appear. You don't have to do that anymore. So I'm happy about that. But it doesn't change the fundamental flaw of being gatekeeping to card acquisition in general. So I'll leave it there because I think y'all have a lot to say about that. But that's kind of my take on this revamp. It's kind of like an iterative improvement, but not something that gets me necessarily stoked.
Well, and for the people who have not completed Pool 3, we didn't talk about that, right? So are they giving away one Pool 3 card per month? Is that right? Like you get to you get all the Pool 3 cards, and then you get to choose one.
Yeah, so they talk about that in the next section.
Oh, all right. We'll wait then.
Well, if you'd like, maybe because they're kind of conjoined, why don't I skip ahead and read the card acquisition improvements? Quote,
yeah, because they're kind of important.
They're
like,
dovetailed.
I think it's important.
Yeah,
for the discussion.
So let's merge them because I think that makes the conversation more relevant and meaningful. So card acquisition improvements. Every new card released in Marvel Snap should be exciting and impactful. We want players to wonder how that card could unlock new possibilities for fun or to win matches, and be able to actually play out those dreams. Very aspirational. We've heard your feedback that we're not meeting these expectations right now. It's time to change that. We're increasing the rate that all players earn tokens, including a huge boost for Series 3 players that brings them in line with Series 4 and 5 players. These changes will give all players equal opportunities to unlock brand new cards for themselves, whether you're in Series 3 or beyond. This is true to an extent. More tokens. We're increasing the amount of tokens earned on the collection level track for all players who have not yet collected all Series 4 and 5 cards. Starting at collection level 500, players will be able to earn between 200 to 600 tokens in collector's caches and reserves, regardless of whether they have completed Series 3 or not. This is a fourfold increase for players who have not yet completed Series 3. Once a card series is complete, caches that would have contained a card from that series will now be replaced with 100 tokens. All of these changes will result in more tokens for more people. And that's true. I think that for those who are Series 4 and Series 3 complete, it's a, what do they say, like a 7 point something percent?
7%, yeah.
Let me ask you a
Mhm.
question. What is 6,000 divided by 100?
No. We don't do those
Yeah,
calculations
we're
here.
card gamers. We don't do math.
All right. Now, finally, we've been alluding to this, that like we heard that Series 3 players are going to get more tokens. That's really cool. Series 4 and 5 players are going to get more tokens. That's cool. And I want to be clear, we're going to be focusing on what we don't like. I am happy to get tokens faster. I don't think anyone would argue against it. I think the piece that has us concerned is that the choose your card change. So Series 3 cards now have their own section in the shop. Once per season, players who haven't completed Series 3 will be able to claim one free Series 3 card to help them fill out their favorite deck and to take a step closer to completing their collections. Now you can save your tokens for Series 4 and 5 cards. You don't need to wait long for these updates. Both of these changes will be in our next patch, which is now live. I think that this change takes agency away from Series 3 players. When I entered in Series 3, I bought a few Series 3 cards that first month so that I could get out of playing the decks that I had in Series 2. And that gave me some agency over my experience. Now, technically, if I were to engage with the game in the most mathematically correct way possible, I shouldn't have spent those tokens on the Series 3 cards. But that's where the qualitative marries the quantitative. It improved my experience, therefore it was the right thing for me. And it was my choice whether I wanted to save my tokens for 4 and 5 cards or to get through Series 3 faster. Now you can't do that. Now you
And
can
they don't
choose
even
one card a
say it,
month.
right? Like they don't actually.
Well,
The only way we
did.
learned it, like they did. Well, they didn't make it. They didn't make it clear that the free card a month was replacing your ability to buy Series 3 cards.
That's true. Well, you can infer, but yes, you're right. They don't
Well, nobody-
explicitly say it. Yeah.
So that's like the funny thing. Like me and a bunch of other people doing like a video on the news updates. Everyone was really positive when they read this, right? We were like, wow, this is actually great. They're letting people choose a free card a month. That's awesome. But nobody knew about, like, I didn't see anyone catch that this was in any way inferring that you couldn't buy Series 3 cards anymore. And we only learned about that when someone asked a clarification question, and they said it on Discord that, yeah, you won't be able to spend your tokens on Series 3 cards anymore. It's like, that's a pretty huge change, and I think it should have been made more clear here because most people aren't keeping up to date with the Q&A stuff in the Discord, and it took what should have been like a really easy win and made it actually feel like a step backwards when it was supposed to be a step forwards. Because here's the thing with the agency with cards. What Blue said is correct. It's not necessarily mathematically correct to be spending your tokens on the Series 3 cards. But the thing is, it takes a long time to get through Series 3.
Oh
Even
my
if you're
gosh, it takes
paying money,
forever.
It takes
it,
months.
it takes a
months.
long time. Whether you're
It
paying, not paying, it takes
months if you're logging
literally
in every
months.
day.
Yeah.
If you're not logging in every day, it'll take you even longer. And like you can't, we're highly engaged players. We logged in every day. Like Nate, you logged in every day to do your dailies. NHL, who's also a Battle Pass player, a friend of ours, logged in every day to do his day. It took you guys like 3-4 months to get through it. That's a long freaking time. That's
Oh, dude, and I was like, I don't know if it was good, good or bad, but every time I'd get gold, I would spend it on more quests so that I
to
could
help
get
progress
more,
it.
That's how I did it too. Yeah.
more broad bucks so that I could
Yep.
beef
I
up my
bought the-
characters so that I
bought the
could.
pro bundle.
Yeah, right.
Dude, that must have been really expensive, especially in Canadian money.
$140.
Holy
Mhm.
crap, dude! It's
Yeah.
$99.99 here.
Oh, our
Even
dollar
that's
is
high,
our
yeah.
dollar is
Boy.
total poop.
Yeah, wow. It's just so. Let me ask: Can you still? Will they still be able to open them from like collectors' caches and
Yeah,
stuff?
of course.
That's how they-
so
that's
nothing
how
has
they have to get them.
changed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nothing has changed in terms of how you actually get the pool 3 cards in the boxes. But the reason this is so frustrating, right? Like, people asked them about this, and they were like, we don't want to like. I'm trying to remember their exact wording, but they were basically saying we don't want the Series 3 journey to be trivial. And nobody was saying it was trivial with the token
Dude,
shop.
it
Nobody
took months.
at all.
It was not
Nobody
trivial
is
at
saying that.
all.
But here's the thing that frustrated me. So I think I'm the only one here who is like pretty active in the beta. And if you didn't know, and I mean you guys even saw this post launch because the token shop wasn't there at launch. And so going through, I did my whole pool 3 without a token shop.
Oh,
And let me tell you, that was an awful experience because there were a few decks I really wanted to play. One of those decks was Patriot. Patriot was really, really good. And on top of being good, it just looked really fun. Like I was like, oh, I like the idea here of being able to use these textless cards, but actually getting like a boost out of them. It just seemed like a fun archetype to me. I get to play Ultron, who I think is a really cool card.
dude, I played a crap load of Patriot.
It's just fun, right?
Yeah, it's
a
really
neat
fun.
very,
It's
very
really
fun
fun.
deck.
Neat archetype, neat mechanics. Just it's a good time. Everybody loves Patriot.
And Patriot was my second to last pool 3 card. I got it at level like 3200 or something.
Wow.
So there was no agency there. I was just unlucky that I didn't get Patriot earlier on, and so I couldn't play the deck I wanted to play. And this is why or at least I would give the advice to people of, yeah, well, it's technically correct to be saving your tokens. Here's the thing. If you're not having a good time playing the game, you're not going to last 3 or 4 months to make it to the end of pool 3. You're going to burn out and quit before that happens. And I saw that happen to a lot of people. And so my advice was always, you should spend some of your early tokens to help get you, the few core pieces you need to build a deck or 2 decks that you really like, that you enjoy playing, to make it so you actually have fun while you're doing your pool 3 journey. Now you're not going to have every card under the sun or whatever, but the thing is, it added agency when previously there was none. And we saw this right after the token shop released, that Ongoing Destroyer was a really popular deck. And it was basically like Destroyer and Sarah were like the 2 S tier token shop buys, because you could buy those cards, and with just that card alone and your other pool 1 and pool 2 cards, you had like a pretty competitive Series 3, or a deck that could compete in Series 3 without having a lot of Series 3 cards. So that's why you saw so many people flock to those decks, because they didn't need a lot of the Series 3 cards that people didn't have yet. And the thing that really frustrates me with this change is they're still giving players those 3,000 tokens when you first get the shop. But now, before, that was giving you essentially like 3 pool 3 cards to help you start off your journey. And now it's giving you 1 pool 4 card or half of a pool 5 card. And that does not jumpstart you nearly as much. And that leads to like the other thing I find frustrating about this change is they're like, well, it'll help you get the pool 4 and pool 5 cards faster, so you can get the new cards faster, right? Well, here's the thing. A lot of these pool 4 and pool 5 cards work best with pool 3 cards. Like everyone.
A
like
lot of
Sherry
the
Red Skull,
Like-
Taskmaster.
Like our friend,
yeah.
our friend
Red Skull,
Wombat, he got Zabu. He bought Zabu. I don't know if he bought Zabu or pulled Zabu. He got Zabu, but then couldn't get Sarah.
Yeah, and so like the lack of agency there is frustrating. And someone brings up in the chat here, so like the idea is, before these pool 3 players were getting like 1k tokens a month, right? And so they could spend those 1k tokens on getting a new pool 3 card, and the new system replaces that. And that's all fine and good, right? Like, I don't have any problem with that. But if anything, that's saying like, well, that's kind of staying the same, but now you're getting tokens as like a bonus on top of it. Whereas before, those were all your tokens. You had to spend them. And it was competing resources. Now your tokens are only going to be for the pool 4 and the pool 5 cards, but you get more of them. And it also brings up like an interesting point of there were a lot of people who spent money to speed pool 3 along because they knew at the end of pool 3 they would get more tokens. And at least something I've seen was there were quite a few people who were kind of frustrated about the fact that they feel like they tried to get to the point where they would get more tokens, and now it feels a little invalidated that they paid to speed it along because now everyone's getting it. And while I think it's a good thing, to be clear, it's a good thing that they are giving more tokens to people. The big part of the problem I have with this is with the Series 3 shop stuff. Because while yes, they were only getting 1,000 tokens a month for one new card, that's only in your natural progression without like spending money, without buying any of these bundles, and without counting that 3K tokens you got at the start. So Pool 3 players did actually have more opportunities to get more than just one card a month. One card was just kind of the bare minimum, especially with the recent addition of the Token Tuesday stuff and the other bundles. Like, I know a lot of different people in Pool 3 who they use those tokens to get the cards they wanted in Pool 3 because there are a lot of decks that are mostly or all Pool 3 cards. Like the Electro Ramp that Nate was playing, I'm pretty sure that's entirely Pool 3. And that's a very popular deck. Like you can do very well in this game with just pool 3 decks. I even saw, I think it was Ocean Mud, I believe. He's like the free to play guy, and he took down I think 2 different tournaments this week with fully pool 3 decks. So I think that removing this level of agency where it's like, yeah, now you get the one card a month, it's not making it a lot. Like you're basically getting what you were getting before, but now you have more tokens for the pool 4 and pool 5 stuff. But if you're a brand new player and you just break into Series 3, I think it's a worse experience because now you can't kind of fill out your early progression and you're forced to rely on the RNG outside of that one you pick a month. And that can be really rough because what if you're a pool 3 player whose first handful of boxes are things like Crystal, are things like...
Do you remember, Zombies? My first pool 3 pulls, how angry I was. It was bad.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
The common counterpoint I hear to this is, but Blue, they're giving them more tokens. It's just a net benefit. It's like, yeah, it's like if you give me more money, but like you put a velvet rope in front of the store and I can just look like longingly at the things in the window because while I have the money, I'm not allowed to go into the store to spend it how I would like. I can only use it to buy certain things. I think one thing's very clear. This is not so, well, it's clear to me. This is just my opinion. I do not believe that this decision alone is for pure financial gain. I genuinely believe that this is the curated experience that Second Dinner wants its players to have. They don't want agency over card acquisition. That's something that's an anathema to their overall view of how they want the game experience to be. The problem is that most people who've played other card games especially are accustomed to being able to precisely target what they want. And you cannot do that in this game until you pass a certain threshold. Like at this point, Zombies, I think it's fair to say that you pretty much can target what you wish to acquire, but you are in that very narrow minority. And it takes time to get there. You can't just throw a bag on the table and basically, warp me to the end. It just doesn't work that way.
In virtually every card game, whether it's paper or digital, like you can buy singles, right? You can either craft them or you can buy them. I found out today that there is a pre-release event for Pokemon. There's a new Pokemon set that just is coming out, and there was a pre-release event for it today. But it's like, oh, cool, the thing is coming out. There's new cards. Let me figure out what I want to play, and I can theory craft my decks, and we can talk about, we can get all excited. How's this going to work? How's it going to interact with each other? We think we know, but we're not really sure until we actually play it. And as soon as it comes out, I'm going to buy these cards, and I want to build this, and I want to play it. And now you just can't do that. Like the new card comes out, and it's like I don't. And I mean, I don't want to go down this big rabbit hole, right? But like, we've talked about this so many times that like, I don't want to watch your Negasonic Teenage Warhead video because I ain't going to get the card for several months. And so like, I'm just not even going to engage in your content because like, why bother when it's something that I can't partake of myself? And so I end up watching like old content because like, I want to learn this deck, but it's not like even valid anymore because there's new cards or the cards in the deck got nerfed, right? So
yeah, it's really it creates a very tricky environment for creating content around the game, and it's so like while this change might make it so that these players can get the pool 4 and pool 5 cards easier, and that's a good thing. It's gonna I think you're gonna see what happens when, you know, there's been a little bit of time that passed and people are getting these pool 4 and pool 5 cards, and they're like, well, what do I do with this? And then people give them the list, and they look, and it's like, oh, well, I don't have Magneto, or
right,
I don't
so
have Lockjaw, or I don't have whatever other card. And it's like,
so
well,
I put the
I guess you have to do your one card a month, but a lot of these decks require multiple pool 3 cards. So it really does feel like, yes, you guys are right in that part of this is their design philosophy of unique collections and whatnot, and we've talked about that a lot. But the other thing that this does, and I don't think it's a happy accident, is this does kind of encourage, you know, when you open a box and you get a mediocre pool 3 card or one you didn't want, suddenly that urge to be like, man, you know, maybe I should go for a few more boxes to try and get the one that I want. It feels like it kind of preys on that a bit in standard mobile gaming fashion. Where it's like it's trying to goad people a bit, where when they get unlucky, they feel a bit of that impulse to break out the most OP card, the credit card, and use that to kind of offset their bad luck. And that kind of doesn't leave a great taste to me.
So check it out. On the screen, I've got the 2 current tier 1 meta decks, right? I mean, I know maybe not anymore because of the recent nerfs, but like the Shuri deck and the Thanos deck, right?
Sure as heck is.
Well, it is. But like, okay, so I can get Shuri, right, as a pool. I mean, she just bumped down, right, from 5 to 4. Is that right? The pool numbers always confuse me. But like, okay, I say I'm a pool 3 player. My pool 3 is incomplete. Mm-hmm. I can buy Shuri now in the shop. Mm-hmm. But if I'm missing Taskmaster and I'm missing Red Skull and I'm missing She-Hulk, like, who cares?
It doesn't work, yeah. Like, it doesn't actually...
Or the Thanos one, right? Like, I can buy Thanos, but, like, if I don't have, I guess...
Wave, Magneto...
Leech. Leech is pool 2, but
Leech
yeah.
But like, right, I mean, that's your point, right? If I'm trying to visualize it, it's like...
Yeah, that's basically exactly. The whole thing is like, yeah, you can get this new card, but it's going to be a lot harder. And Thanos is a little bit more universal because you can make Thanos work a bit better. But Shuri is a really good example because what we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pool 3 cards in the Shuri deck.
That are very specific to that deck as well.
Yeah,
not all of them, but
they don't have equivalent replacements.
I
right?
saw
like,
previous versions using.
Right?
I saw previous versions using Black Panther and Arnim Zola, but like even then, right? Mm-hmm. Black Panther was
it's still a pool 4 card,
right? It was a battle pass card, and then it went to pool 5, right? And then it dropped down.
4, and it might be dropping to 3 next month. We're not entirely sure, but it looks
like
it might.
Maybe if you're lucky.
Yeah, we don't know, because if you don't know, next month is the first month they're going to be dropping the cards that launched at pool 5 all the way down to 3. They've been sitting in 2 for a while, but we don't know if they're going to break it up or not, right? Like, there are a lot of cards that could be dropping down. We have Bast, we have Valkyrie, Super
They've been doing, it seems like the pattern that's emerging, we'll talk about that, is three cards from 4 to 3 a month.
Yeah, so that would mean they're probably going to split it up because there are quite a few cards that launched in Pool 5, and then you also include Black Panther because he went in around that time. So it takes a really long time for these cards to move down to Series 3, and then that adds another piece of the equation here where Series 3 continues to get more bloated with more cards, so it takes longer for people to get through it, and the RNG aspect of getting one specific card you want is lower.
I'm sorry, you said the word.
Even with the free card they're giving you a month, it's not like you just pull up a list and say, hey, I want this card. It's you log into the game once every 8 hours to see if Flannel Jesus here has put the one you're looking for in your shop. So it's...
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Someone gonna make a Flannel Jesus meme now?
Yeah, right. Oh, someone please do that. But yeah, so it frustrates me to see agency being removed when that is the thing people have been asking for a long time, and the one piece of agency they gave us, they're now kind of taking away for Pool 3 players, or at least they're making it less impactful. And I really, and like Nate said, this does line up with their development philosophy, but the hill I will die on is, it feels to me like they view their success with the game as a result of their collection system, when I think they have succeeded because they made a great game in spite of their collection system.
Absolutely. And getting Game of the Year gave them that boost. But again, because the game is so fun, there's so many aspects of the game between the different locations and the cards and the quickness of the games that make it an amazing game. The acquisition is just absolute, utter Cosmo poop. I'm sorry. It's terrible. I've never played a game before where I wanted to throw money at it and I couldn't. I just wanted to buy the cards and sorry, you can't do that.
And it's weird too, right? Because you would think in these mobile games, usually people bring up, oh, well, it's the 1% or 0.1% that are the big spenders, right? That spend the most. But the funny thing about Snap is it feels like it has a weird identity crisis of who it's trying to appeal to. Because if you don't know, the true giga whales, and I mean the biggest of the big mobile whales, I'm someone who spends a good amount of money on the game, and I'm not even remotely close to what a true big mobile whale will spend on a game. But the thing is, the people who do that, these are some of these people spend in the 5 figures on mobile games. But the thing is, Snap is going to immediately scare away those type of players, because those players are used to being able to, they pay their money, they get their progression. The whole reason they pay that much money is so they don't have to do any of the waiting silliness that mobile games do. Yeah, right? But the thing is, you immediately push out all the people who are okay with that system, which I'm not saying they need to make it so you can't just drop infinite money and get all the way through, but it feels weird to me that if that's their goal, if they want people like that to play their game or to buy into their game, they found a way to push those people away while also frustrating everyone else. It's so very strange.
It is. I mean, not to. I look. I want to be clear that I think that this is a change in the wrong direction, but one might misconstrue what you're trying to say, Zombies, is saying that wouldn't it be better if it was pay to play, right? You could buy your way in. And I think that for many people, myself included, I'm a bit conflicted, because on the one hand, I don't want this to become Diablo Immortal.
Oh,
yeah,
of course.
Yeah, no, I agree.
You don't want that. It's just it makes me question it, right? Who it's for, right? Because it's okay that it's not like that, but it's why it confuses me why, if they're a mobile game and let's say that they were wanting to target whales, that would be how you do it, but they're finding a way to not only frustrate their free to play and pass spenders and even larger spenders at the same time as frustrating those people who might pay more than anybody else. And it's who is this, who are they targeting with this is kind of the question.
So to
me
wonder, it's a false equivalency, right? Because the way that this argument plays out in the typical, spaces, Twitch chat, Reddit, YouTube comment section is it's a binary. You either have agency and the game's pay to win, or you have no agency and you have what we have right now. And I believe genuinely that you can make your game not be like Diablo Immortal, like that extreme example, as the only mechanism to provide players agency. And my my evidence to support this claim is the very thing they took away from us with the pool with the Series 3 token shop.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
you took away agency, right? I bought 4 cards the first month, I think, and I bought less Series 3 cards than most people because I was thinking long term. But I bought Lockjaw. I bought Hell Cow. That was against I just really wanted it. I bought Mystique, and I don't even remember. I bought something else. I might have
You bought
bought
like the
Dracula.
discard cards, right?
Yeah, I
Like,
think I bought Dracula.
got,
No,
like,
I bought Colleen. I bought
Mhm.
Colleen.
I bought
and
the
so,
I bought the Patriot cards. I got
Right.
Patriot and Mystique and
so I bursted them. That was 4 months of Series 3 cards that I
it was
acquired
so
in one.
helpful.
And sure, you could say, but Blue, you could have got a Series 4 card for that. It doesn't matter. Looking at your example prior, it doesn't matter if I have the Series 4 card. I won't have the package. But it's like if you have Patriot and it's like you have the Series 5 card that slots in, it doesn't exist, but you're missing Patriot Mystique. Like, it doesn't matter if you don't have the building blocks.
Or you take a deck like Patriot that has no Series 5 cards. I don't even think it has any Series 4 cards, right? They're all
think
3.
so. I mean, the new version.
Well,
new version of
there's
it runs,
different
like,
versions,
Fast
but,
and
like,
Valkyrie.
the
But
classic
the original Patriot, is
Yeah.
nothing above Series 3.
I hope that this was a change that was made with good intention, and I think genuinely that it was, because if you look at the change quantitatively, everyone's getting more, right? Series 3, Series 3 and Series 3 complete. Everyone's getting more. So you can say that, all right, it looks like they went in with good intentions, but because they're still very much trying to apply a philosophy to it, they inadvertently took agency away. Hopefully, they'll reconsider some of these things based on feedback they will receive. If you're listening, we appreciate that you're iterating through these changes through a progressive elaboration, but that progressive elaboration has brought us to a point where perhaps maybe we need to reevaluate that early experience. I have IRL friends, they all stopped playing in Series 3. And when I look at other online friends that are kind of in that Series 3 hell, their frustration is really like, I get it, because I felt that frustration, except now it's worse. So yeah, it's really tough.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm so thankful that I'm cleared through Series 3. In my mind, it's like, look, if you want to do this, have a separate Series 3 shop and a Series 4, Series 5 shop, and then a cosmetic shop. And like, cool, you can use your tokens on whatever. And maybe they rotate, but just saying like, well, we're not gonna have a Series 3 shop anymore. Like,
Yeah.
And they should have made this a lot clearer, because it definitely wasn't clear in the thing. And someone else brings up a great point in chat. The fact that I can't buy Pool 3 anymore makes me less likely to buy tokens from them, which I think is true. I've seen a few different people bring this up where, yeah, I get more tokens now, but tokens don't have as much value to me as they did before, because a lot of the cards I'm gunning for aren't actually Pool 4 or Pool 5 cards, because these players often don't have the Pool 3 cards to support those archetypes. So why it's like they're trying to make this so, oh yeah, you can get more excited about new cards, but you really can't. So it definitely feels like it's missing the mark in that respect. And I think it's going to take some more iteration to kind of really accomplish this goal, because it doesn't feel like, if that's their intention, it doesn't feel like this is meeting the mark. And it really shows just how everyone was really happy when they read this, because we didn't know about the token shop thing. And then once we found out, everyone was like, oh, so instead of a step forward, it's kind of a step back. And it's such a shame, because like we were all, I think a lot of people, myself included, were willing to give them kind of the benefit of the doubt that they do want to improve acquisition and getting new cards, because you can't have a card game function long term where new players do not get excited about the cards. It just doesn't work, right?
I loved the early system when I started playing. Like, I felt like their early progression system, and like my kid is starting to play.
Like pool 1, pool 2.
Pool 1, pool 2 was awesome, and it's like
you're getting so many cards.
It takes a while, but you're unlocking cards, and then you can build new and better decks, and it's like okay. And then I hit pool 3, and it was like, oh wait, I get them in these collector's caches. Like, cool. Do I get one every time? No, you end up with like titles like absolute garbage and like embarrassment to my family, and I was so pissed because I was getting those now instead of like the cards that I wanted to play. And then I got those 2 in a row, and then I got like some awful avatar, and I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Or spins on the house, Nate.
So, but anyways, I don't know. I play on my son's account sometimes, or he'll play it, but like I'm trying to unlock cards for him, right? And it's this is interesting, and from that perspective, like, all right, cool, that's nice that we get a free card, but that means I'm gonna have to rely on like hoping that we get good luck in the collector's cache for Series 3 pulls.
And the thing about luck, right, is we as human beings, we as human beings, our brains are wired. We remember the bad RNG a lot more than we remember the good RNG. So for every time you got that one card you were really waiting for, you probably remember more of like those times you got a title that you didn't want. Right, that's just how we're wired, and so I think a lot of the times their argument is we want it to be exciting when you get that thing you really want, but human psychology doesn't really work that way, because even if you have a pure equal, even if it's 50-50 split, getting the really happy good RNG versus the really feel bad RNG, we're going to have a bias that's like, I had more bad RNG than good, and that's if it's even.
And that's just how these things work, right? The survey was so funny. What would make you want to buy more avatars? Would you want to buy them if they had special voice lines? Would you want to buy them if they had custom art? Would you want to buy more avatars if like they had special sounds? Would you want to buy more avatars if they like had custom entry voice lines?
They know people don't care.
It's like, bro, I don't want to buy any avatars ever, please. Like, I'm cool with like, I was cool with the base ones, and then I got the Cosmo, and it's like, all right,
I'd buy the avatars you make for me, Nate.
If you can make custom avatars,
I get Pika Snap or Pika Jamison in a second, but that probably would be a very difficult licensing proposition for them.
I mean, we can all complain. I love the game. I'm sorry to sit here and like be complain because I don't know if anyone wants to hear that, but
we do this, right? Like, it's not from. I hate when no one here is doing it, but I see it on like Discord and the YouTube comments and whatever. It's like, oh, why are you complaining so much? You must hate the game. And it's like, no. I want the game to be better for everybody playing it because I really like the game, and I feel like in its current form, it's taking what is a very winning formula in terms of gameplay, and it's massively limiting the amount of people who actually can engage with that really fun gameplay to make it kind of the biggest and the best game it can be. Because, like, if you'll notice, like, I mean, well, maybe we'll have some complaints when we get to the balance section, but for the most part, like, the thing, we don't really have a whole lot of issue with actually playing the game. It's all the stuff outside of playing the game that is problematic. Although that's not
for the most part.
Can I ask one question real quick before we move on? Because I feel like it's relevant, but it's not addressed here. So a couple, maybe a month back or a couple episodes back, you remember that when they announced like, hey, we're gonna have these special like stamps or something for the card that says like first edition. Yes. How is all that gonna play into this? Because I haven't heard anything about that in a while, and so it was like when I saw like Thanos in my shop, I was like, oh dude, I want a first edition Thanos, and now I'm like
is this still happening?
I'm looking so hard for Galactus. Like I want the Series 1 Galactus. I don't want to be like the noob that gets the Series 2 Galactus.
You actually can't get a not first edition Galactus or
because they're never going to move down from the pool,
Series
right?
5. Yes. But to answer the question, someone asked about it relatively recently and like in the last week. and they basically said where we have like I think they have like the art design either started or in the process of being implemented. So I imagine it's something we'll see in the not super distant future, but they didn't give like a specific time frame.
I
But sometime
honestly,
in the coming months, and it's going to be retroactive. So anything you got in Series 5 will have that first edition badge, and it's also it shows up on the variants too. So all the variants of a card you get, it's all going to show up there.
I hope you
Someone
can like
else
display it or not display it, because like I don't want
like a
to.
toggle.
So you know when people buy like the ball caps and they leave the sticker on,
Yeah.
that's what it reminds me of. And I always think this, like, I don't want the stupid sticker on my ball cap. Like, can I take it off and play
Like
with
the
it that
Beanie
way?
Babies.
Right?
Yeah.
You know what would be so great? And I don't know if they've said anything about this. Blue and I talked about the other day. Like the reason I love the red borders, right? The ultra ones, the glowy red are my favorite. And so I'll upgrade a card to infinite, and then I like the foils, and I'll upgrade it until I get the red border, and then I just stop because I like the red border. If they could let you choose the border, like to ones that you've previously unlocked, that would be so
Yeah, that's a
freaking
big
cool.
requested feature, and that's another one where I'm pretty sure that's something that's going to happen, but it's not like a big priority over other stuff they want to do. And they talked about it a little bit before, where they're like, "We're open to the idea of doing this, but we also need a way for people to figure out what rarity your card is at when you can choose your border
Hmm.
and whatnot." So it's
Well, it
I'm
goes
almost
back
certain they're
to
gonna do that. It's just probably not gonna happen soon.
it goes back to Blutrane's like what do you call it, like game in constant development,
Yeah, yeah.
agile, right?
game.
And so and it's like, hey, we've got certain resources that we can allocate to things, and we have to allocate them to priority projects and not wish list projects, right?
Yeah, the cosmetic thing that you're talking about is probably a story on their consolidated backlog, right? And so think of that as like a job jar. And
Oh,
when
sweet.
it
So it's
comes
never going to
time,
happen then.
well, I mean, eventually it will. When it's first, or when it's, so what they do, like usually, I don't want to get into this, but think of it like this:
We can let it
they've
go. It's
got
cool. It's cool.
yeah, they have sprints, and in a sprint they can execute a certain amount of user stories, and so they basically kind of build out their development cycle like that. I have no idea how long a sprint is at Second Dinner, or how much capacity they have to execute changes or features within that, but that is almost certainly how they're divvying it up. And I do not know when they will prioritize that, because it's not listed as a thing on this roadmap. I think it's fair to say that if it is coming, it won't be for
Oh man,
some
it's so low
time.
priority. Okay, we're at an hour and a half, so let's talk about this infinite rank
Yeah.
revamp.
And we
Yeah,
do want to
maybe.
mention before we move on though the changes to the token shop. The only things that have been implemented so far are the free card a month for Pool 3, no more Pool 3 tokens, and the Pool 3 incomplete players get more tokens. But all the other stuff we talked about sounds like it's coming in April. So the specific new card shop, the Pool 4 and Pool 5 and Ultimate variants getting their own ones, all that stuff sounds like it's coming in April, and the more tokens and the Pool 3 stuff we talked about is currently live in the game.
So
Cool.
the next two items coming soon, we'll batch them together: rank mode improvements and infinity rank revamp. I think that we'll have less to say on this, so hopefully we can move it to the second half of our program, which will be largely focusing on the balance changes that were released this week.
Yeah.
All right, rank mode improvements. We've been hearing your feedback about ranked mode, and we agree it's time to make some changes. Rank mode is a tough feature to get right, and we want to find the right balance through some additional iteration. There's that agile term again. We're making a few updates before our next season that will address issues with some players feeling unable to progress, or players that feel that they are not facing worthy opponents. Matchmaking algorithm. We're improving our matchmaking algorithm to create higher quality matches for all players, including an update that will prevent players from matching against an opponent more than 30 ranks away. Infinite MMR floor. When someone reaches infinite rank, will take a snapshot of their MMR matchmaking rating for the rest of the season. Their MMR cannot fall below that value. This change is to address players that could intentionally lose many games at the infinite rank floor to drop their MMR for the next season. You'll still be able to increase your MMR while playing in the infinite rank, but it will not decrease beyond that floor. This is what we talked about before with people Agatha farming.
Bot farming, yeah.
Infinite versus infinite matchmaking. Players that reach infinite rank will only match against other infinite rank players. So I think the most common complaint is, I'm level 70 and I'm already facing people with the infinite card back. Very frustrating. We know there's more work to be done. We think the current journey to reclimb to a previous season's rank is too difficult. To that end, we are exploring changes to how many cubes are required per rank, how many bonus cubes are granted when a player achieves a new tier, and potentially how much of a reset is incurred each season. These numbers are actively being crunched right now, so we don't have more details to share, but rest assured, our goal is to deliver a satisfying seasonal experience for players who wish to get better at the game and see their rank increase as a result.
This is how can we copy Hearthstone's homework, but make it a little bit different?
Well, they've changed their ladder a lot over the years, and there's a lot of good things about it. We've also seen a lot of feedback around matchmaking by MMR, and while we don't simply match by rank, the team has been weighing the positives and negatives of both of these options. In a pure match by rank situation, it could lead to an awful start of season experience, like mine, as players matching up against opponents who are far superior to them. However, we are exploring alternative ways of matchmaking to try to deliver a more satisfying overall experience, as there are some upsides to matching by rank. We have some ideas that we think can capture the best of both worlds, and we'll be trying our updates to the matchmaker in future seasons. We'll absolutely be sharing more as we lock in details. You'll hear more from us soon. So I think we'll talk a little bit in a second about how they're going to change Infinite, but I think that just overall for the ladder experience, I think most of what they said in there is good. I think it addresses a lot of the common complaints, and while this month was tough on ladder personally, the change that they made as a stopgap, I think, did make the climb less grindy for many of us, and I think it was a step in the right direction.
I love these. I think these are great.
The 50 bonus cubes instead of the 10.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, the climb was still plenty difficult, but that made it like, I loved it. It gave you a goal, right? I want to hit 80 because then I get the bump to 85.
Right.
And then it makes it feel more achievable. And I don't know. I like these. I like these ideas. And I was complaining on some of these same things. We were talking to Sheep the other day. We all kind of went around with some of these same issues that they're talking about here. And so the idea that they're going to address these specific issues is actually pretty sweet. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for it. I think that I don't really have any concerns, frankly. So
yeah, so it's pretty good, right? Like, I mean, I really like the boost.
The bot farming thing was pretty gnarly too, right? That people would do that, and to have an easy climb next season.
Oh yeah, well, so they're getting rid of that with the infinite MMR stuff and whatnot, and it sounds like they're actually going to be adding a post-infinite system, which is great because right now infinite's kind of the playground where you can do whatever you want because there's an actual ranked floor. And,
well, yeah, it's the only ranked floor, right? And
yeah,
well,
and it's kind of a
problem. Well, except for bronze 1.
Yeah. It's probably it's such a weird feeling that that such a small percentage of the player base actually gets there, and that's what is viewed as the casual testing grounds, right? Because it's like most people are never going to get there.
Do we know how many, like what the percent is? Yeah, like Hearthstone has showed us, right? That
Like
it's like 1% or something.
So. Yeah,
it was 1% before the latest change.
So it's probably a little bit more now, but it might not be. We don't know, but it probably has helped people get to Infinite, which is good.
Well, actually, wait a second. They didn't say that 1% was the number. What they said is 1% is a good number to aim for. So perhaps that's an inference, and I'm only guessing
Oh, I
that
think they
maybe it
said
was
1% too, because someone asked, they were like, I think it's like 5% of the player base they said is 80 and above. And then I believe somewhere they said 1% or a little bit above 1% was
okay.
at Infinite. But again, this was before the changes were made.
Mhm.
And there just really should be somewhere for people. Like it's such a weird thing when the big argument I see come up when people talk about like the collection system is, well, it's not made to be a more competitive game, and that's why the collection system's okay, is because you're not supposed to take this game super competitively. But then my question there is, if I'm not supposed to take the game competitively, why is the only way to play it ranked mode? Why is there
Because
only
that was the minimally viable product to launch Marvel Snap. So
Yeah.
let's talk about a little bit of so that's kind of like addresses the mid to lower section of the player base. And now this next one is really for the very top at Infinite, which there's been much discussion about that. So for most of us, the climb to Infinite rank has been our peak achievement. We have some great news. We're completely revamping Infinite rank so your experience doesn't end at Infinite. I know Martian Boo will be thrilled with this one. It's just the beginning. We want to create an exciting and fair battleground for our most skilled players to compete on the Infinite rank leaderboard. Once players reach Infinite rank, they are separated into their own ecosystem that will highlight two important numbers. Skill rating score. This score is your personal skill rating score. It is similar to your matchmaking rating. You'll be able to see how your skill rating score changes after each match. If you're more interested in increasing your personal skill from season to season, this is the number for you. Leaderboard rank. Your friends have always claimed that they're the best Marvel Snap player. Well, now we'll find out. So, Ben, if you're still out there, we'll find out. I'm just teasing.
Oh, snap.
This is the leaderboard number based on the ranking order of each Infinite player's skill rating score. So if you're thinking, this sounds a lot like Legend or Mythic in Magic the Gathering, it is. We're fine-tuning the experience and visuals for the new Infinite Rank ecosystem and currently scoping out the work, but we're hoping to release it as soon as possible. More details on timing soon. So hopefully what this means will be that like once you pass a certain threshold in Infinite, you won't queue into bots. I don't know. We'll see.
It's leaderboards for Infinite, right? So like it's like we have in Hearthstone. So I'll have like if I'm Legend in Hearthstone, I've got a number, and then we see the leaderboards to see who's in a certain rank, and so
it
that's
gives you something to chase, right? Like right now, there's no point. I mean, we saw. I think Code Deco. Great players, and they got to Infinite 1000 last month.
I remember when I saw Collins hit 400, and I was like, "Oh my god!" And then these guys hit 1000. It's like this is insane.
It was insane.
And all the top players who do that, they're all very vocal about the fact that they are playing a different game than we are playing because they are in what is known as bot MMR, and it's literally a different it's a different game because most of the time they're not playing human beings because their MMR is too high and the game just keeps feeding them bots. But I imagine that we already know, like they confirmed in Conquest, there aren't going to be any bots. And I have a feeling that they're going to strip out the bots from Infinite. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of problems with this skill rating score actually meaning anything if people towards the top are essentially playing a different game where they are farming bots, because it literally is a different game, and you actually sometimes it's beneficial to build your deck in a way that would be suboptimal versus human players because of how the bots play and what they know and how they operate. So and people, like, I mean, a bit more casual of the player base goes and they see, oh man, this guy's rank something 100 or 1000, and it's like, wow, they must be the best player in the world. And it's not to say they aren't good players. They definitely are good players, or they wouldn't have got their MMR that high. But you can't, like, it's harder to learn from what they're doing because what their experience is doesn't represent the experience of the average player. And now, while that's true in other card games, sometimes, high level play can be different. This is totally different because it's not that this is high level play, player versus player. it's high level play bot versus player, and it just makes for a very different game. And pretty much everyone in that MMR has been pretty vocal about that they don't want to be there, but they also don't like having to manually tank their rank down so that they can face other human beings, and then they naturally progress back into the bot and they have to do it again. And it's just like, you shouldn't have to do that. So we don't have any official confirmation on how something is changing with this, but if they are implementing a system like this with a leaderboard for Infinite, I think they pretty much just have to remove post-Infinite bots, because otherwise it's going to be a very abusable system.
Well, or we're going to have to note, like, the bots will be on the leaderboard, right?
Or make a bot match not count towards your skill.
Yeah, that's another
or
one.
something.
But even then, that gets problematic too, right? Because then what happens if you're in bot MMR and you aren't facing enough people, so you're kind
Right.
of stuck. You can't actually progress your number because you're not getting the real people. So I think something will have to change there. But it's also worth it to note that one of the changes they're talking about here is, so post-infinite players won't be able to run into pre-infinite players, which is a good change in one way, because
It also means they need to increase the population.
yeah, that's true as well. So right now you do often, like, there's a double-edged sword here, right? If you run into infinite players, sometimes they're nice and they want to stay in the game, and they'll stay in a game. They have a good chance of losing, and you get kind of a cube donation as a result, because they just want to see the game play out. They don't care if they're winning or losing the cubes. So that is kind of a plus of the current system. But on the flip side, infinite players also can snap more freely, because they don't care if they're losing the cubes, which is not a good thing, because the people who are climbing in the 70s and the 80s and 90s, they care a lot more about losing those cubes.
Oh my God.
Oh,
Rank 98 and your opponent's like snapping on turn one. It's like, okay.
Yeah,
Do I
and it was
stay in? Do I
similar,
get out?
like in
Yeah.
Hearthstone
Like,
too, right? Like you get people trying harder on the climb in the first few days, and then some people get legend, and you get people who don't care about their legend rating a ton, so they play a bit more meme stuff, and it might get a little bit easier. So it's not unique to Snap. It's just, it's interesting, and I do wonder. I do think there's a chance it does result in actually players trying to climb running into more competitive decks, because they're only seeing the people who aren't there yet, so they're all trying to climb. Like, we see that right now, right? Where when we looked at the data, you see much more of the popular meta decks in that 80 to 100 range, because people aren't messing around. They don't have cubes to throw away. They just want to get there and be done with
Yeah.
it. So they're going to play the best thing they have, or the best thing out there, to get that done.
agreed. Well, let's, we are talking about like our 1% of the population, right? So,
But
I
it's
don't know.
great that they're finally doing this. I do want to give some praise for that, because
I think it's great.
Frankly, I'm surprised it hasn't happened sooner. Like, I really thought this would have been sooner, but at least it's finally happening. And
Perhaps they're surprised at how much people are playing the game competitively, and they're adjusting as a result.
I think that's definitely part of it. And then the other thing is, I think they also, so like, a big part of advertising for this game is through content creation, and a lot of content creators do hit infinite. And I don't think it paints as good of a picture for the game when your people advertising the game, a lot of them aren't caring as much about the snap system, because they've hit infinite and it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
And so I think there is like an advertising lens to it too, where you want the people advertising your game to reflect the experience of it. And I think especially when it comes to the bot stuff, that reflects poorly on the game, because you'd think, the biggest streamers out there, they're who you want to watch to get better at the game. And of course they do give, good advice and good suggestions, but purely watching the gameplay isn't always going to be a learning experience, or worse, you might even learn the wrong lessons, because you're seeing them play against these bots, whereas you're playing against real people, and it's a different game.
The biggest lesson that I've learned is like, hey, you see that all that card art that they've got? If it doesn't have a crackle, then you snap.
No, yeah. So that's an important thing for if you don't know this, anyone in chat or listening later, you can identify a bot in a few different ways, but the most common way you can identify a bot is if you see an inked card or if you see a gold card, you click on it, and if there's no secondary effect, like a sparkle or a crackle or the other just secondary bonus effects, if it has inked or gold and not one of those, that means it's a bot. And then on the flip side, if you see a default background on the card, but it has a secondary effect, that is also a bot, because those are not possible from human players. Human players can't get cards that look like that. And so that's a quick way you know it's a bot, and then you can kind of abuse it a little bit. Be like, okay, bots are usually kind of bad, so I'll snap and I get some more cubes, and it helps push you along the way and inflate the cube economy. But before we move on from the rank stuff, I wanted to hear what you thought about it, Lee. What's your experience been with the kind of the rank changes and the other stuff they were talking about?
I haven't really first I'm going to say that the extra 5 ranks that you get for hitting every 10, like 70, 80, 90, whatever it is is really good.
It's nice, yeah.
I have not been able to experience and enjoy it because for the majority of the month, have been hard stuck around 77. But in my defense, what I've been seeing is just a lot of very weird decks. And Zombies, you were kind of witness to that the other night.
Oh yeah. And that brings up an interesting thing with it, right? Like as annoying as it can be to face, popular meta decks and whatnot, it also can be kind of frustrating when if you're running into a group of players where they're playing a bit more out there stuff, because a big part of Snap is, betting on what you think their outs are versus your outs, right? And
yeah, exactly.
This can be frustrating in other card games as well, where it's like, all right, I know my odds are favored here if they're playing like a popular deck or playing cards that this deck should normally have. But then all of a sudden they're playing a really random card that kind of doesn't make sense, but all of a sudden it flips the game in this one scenario. And I think that definitely adds to frustration when it's like, overall, this is probably making their deck worse, but it just happened to be, you were in that 30% of the wins where it was better. And that could be, and like, how do you play around that? Like, it's kind of objectively correct not to. And that's why it can be so like frustrating, right?
I wonder, it's very weird to see different things like that. Like cards that you don't expect to be in certain shells are there. Like for instance, I say this a lot where Leech has become the new leader.
Oh yeah,
like it doesn't matter what deck you're
people
playing.
Have been chucking in like a lot of different stuff.
Or on the flip side, I've seen Patriot decks that are running Shang-Chi, which you just don't expect, but they are because Shuri's running Rampant. So it's just like, a lot of weird things like that, or decks that just don't make any sense whatsoever, but somehow get there in the end.
Part of it, I wonder if it is caused by this goofy collection system where like, I want to play the Shuri deck, but I'm missing one of the key like pool 3 cards. So I'm just going to throw in Leech or throw in Shang-Chi because I got those cards.
They're like filler cards, right? Like they work well enough on their own where you don't have to build your deck around it. And I can definitely attest to this. Like me and Lee were doing some co-oping the other night, and I was like, he was making what I would consider to be the correct play. And quite a few times he got punished for making the correct play because the opponent was running a card that made absolutely no sense to run, like a random Ultron in a deck that wasn't doing Patriot stuff.
We saw it on My Climb as well. You see a random Doctor Doom, a random a random Absorbing Man, like just weird stuff that you wouldn't think that, I don't know, or just random cards. And I think it's like you never know because you unlock cards starting in pool 3 in a totally random order, that players who want to be engaged with the game and want to try to climb are now forced to play their like janky deck and like, okay, I can go on Marvel Snap Zone and look at their tier list and like, what is the closest thing that I can build to this, tier 1, tier 2 deck. And if I've got all the cards except 1 or 2, like, am I tempted to like, to try to make it work and jam in a sub and like, and then you start seeing your like random Vision, a random like Wong or whatever. Like remember we saw that deck the other day that was like a normal meta deck. It was like a Shuri deck that was playing Wong, and it was like, what is this?
Yeah, that's true. I remember that it was a Wong Shuri. They didn't get the memo about Zabu getting nerfed, I guess.
Well, anyways, I will say one of the things that they do incredibly well is their in-game communication. So you don't have to be a super plugged in player to like get the announcement that there's been a card nerf or
No, they're
whatever it
pretty good
is. So
about that for the most part and whatnot. And I think it's also important to mention it's not a bad thing that like we see these decks and whatever, because I mean variety is good. It's a good thing that
just
not
the
everyone's
spice of
playing.
life, right?
But it can definitely be a little bit frustrating when you're in the higher end of the ranks and you're just trying to climb, and like it feels much harder sometimes to like know what you're supposed to play around when anything's on the table. When like and that's definitely an experience that can happen depending on MMR and whatnot, right? Like that's why I was so surprised when I was playing with you, Lee, and I was just like, wow, like I never would have expected what they played in a million years. So it's like I totally
Yeah.
understand why you've had a harder time
Yeah.
climbing,
It's
because
like, how do you play around that, right? Like, you just can't. Like, what you can't expect the unexpected.
no, and in a lot of situations, it's like it's smarter to not play around that thing that's going to get you 1% of the time, but it makes it that
Exactly.
much more frustrating when it actually happens.
But
And
because of that,
so
also, I've been very apprehensive to snap, right? So,
yeah, well, that's also, I think we can talk about that in the balance section.
yeah.
I think that it's a little bit better now, but it's still not great. But
Mhm.
man, before the changes, and I did a whole little video talking about this, this was the by far the most like conservative I've seen people be about snapping in a season because of all the RNG in the Thanos deck and whatnot. People even playing, even people playing the deck, like it was hard to know unless you had like Quinjet and Lockjaw. Like it was hard to know when you were supposed to
Oh
snap.
man, even so, if I had Quinjet, Lockjaw, and Stones, but my opponent played Quinjet opposite me, I wouldn't snap because like they're
Yeah,
likely going to do the same thing as me, and I'll get punished.
like I did a whole little breakdown of my final climb from like 95 to 100, and 75% of the games were 1 to 2 cube gain or losses.
That was
And that is
my
very not usual compared to past
Yeah.
seasons.
that was my climb as well, like 90,
Mhm.
95 to 100, the majority of the games. And there were like one or two terrifying, like absolutely terrifying 8 cube games. But like,
Yeah, because they're so rare, it gets more stressful, right?
well,
Because
yeah.
it can like that's like 4 or 5 games worth of progress, right? And you're like, oh man, do I stay in? Do I retreat? Do I risk the 8? And then it's like, oh man, if I blow the 8, these snap games aren't happening as often, so it's going to take so much more to get it back. And it
Mhm.
really, the game hasn't really been like that for most of its life. So I think it's kind of a result of the meta we had and still have in some ways. But it was definitely worse when Thanos was a bit more popular pre-patch because it was just like there was just too much random going on, and people were even in the Zabu season where there was an obvious like best deck. You at least knew when to snap and knew when to get out, right? Like, oh, I have Zabu on turn 3 or turn 2 or no, it was 3. Turn 3, I snap.
Right, right.
And you would know, wow, they have Zabu and I don't have Zabu. Okay, I get out. But it was a lot less clear in this past meta that when to snap and when to get out, and especially when to snap. And I think that it's funny that, even though the ladder has been improved in a way to climb easier, I feel like the lack of snapping going on has actually made it harder for a lot of people because you
Mhm.
aren't getting as many of those 4 or 8 cube games that
Well,
kind of push you along the way.
I heard the bots are retreating easier now too.
Yeah, the bots don't stay in quite as much as they used to. The bots used to stay in a lot more, and now it's funny. You'll know it's a bot sometimes because they'll snap you on turn like 4, and then they'll retreat on turn 5. Like it's and it'd always be yeah, like they'll sometimes be playing some weird cards. But this kind of works as a segue, right? Like how about we talk a bit about the balance and meta stuff because we did get a balance change, and we were waiting for the balance change for a bit longer than I guess we normally do. Um,
Yeah, so there's still more on the developer roadmap. This was a huge thing, but I don't really think there's a whole lot to talk about. So I'll just kind of take us through it really quickly. Just
Let's
what's in
just yeah,
development and
jet
what's in
jet through it
concept.
just to share with
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
yeah.
So what's in development is so these are things that are probably going to come after June, probably sometime in the summer, if I had to guess.
Mhm.
PC widescreen UI, praise be. Smart decks, no clue what that is.
It's like in
Avatar-
Hearthstone, I think, where you
Yeah,
press
it's like the
autocomplete to get a
pre-built
deck.
decks or
Pre-built
whatever.
stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, all
Yeah.
right, whatever. Avatars and titles by deck, personalized shop, thank you, and
Mhm.
global matchmaking, which is probably going to be important for their Infinity changes.
Mhm.
In concepts, these are things that they're just kind of spitballing, getting requirements for ideas. Guilds, like a social system. I actually think that's pretty cool. I hope that
Having
does come to
in-game
something
friends would
they're
be
for.
awesome to be able
That'd be
to
nice, yeah.
like. I would love to be able to spectate so that we
Mhm.
could do tournaments. I'd like to spectate so
God,
that
I
I
love
could.
spectator
I'd
mode.
rather so I could watch you through client instead of through Discord, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Or client, or really to host tournaments. Like would be super.
Yeah,
rad,
that's the
but-
big thing for me as well.
So guilds, collectible emotes, and card emoji.
Yeah.
Okay. Mythic variants, because I guess Ultimate is not enough. PC
Mhm.
controller support.
What?
This is probably a good, probably a clue that they're going to want to port it to console, which makes good sense. Seasonal audio. That's cute. And test deck mode.
I like
so,
that.
So I'm not going to read what they wrote about test deck mode, but basically, if you're really gunning for casual mode, it's not coming anytime soon, and when it finally does come, it might only be against bots, which
It's
I
the
suppose
it's the
is better than
innkeeper,
nothing.
right? It's playing against the innkeeper, so you
Yeah,
can learn.
yeah.
Yeah,
Kind of
although in
sparky,
fairness,
yeah.
the bots and Snap are a little bit better than the innkeeper.
Well,
but-
this is I actually do. I just like the idea so that if I'm trying to learn a deck, I can learn it with no stakes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, your opponents are not going to be good per se, but like at least you.
It's more about learning your deck than learning what to play against, right? Like just getting the lines down a little bit, and then obviously then you can take it to the ladder and be like, okay, here's what I have to play against.
I have to imagine there's like no rewards, right? Like you can't check off your daily quests like playing against the in the
Mhm.
test mode. But who knows? Let's move on. That's fine. There's a whole
Yes.
thing about it, right? I don't. You can read it if you want. It doesn't matter to me.
For the test deck, nah. I mean, there's really not a whole lot to say there, other than it's not coming anytime soon, and you're not going to get the casual mode that I think most people were
Yeah,
thinking.
it's kind
would
of a
come.
shame to see that. Like, I think a casual mode would do a lot to ease people's frustrations with the game.
It sounds like the Conquest mode may have a casual-ish or a low stakes.
Kind of what I'm hoping for.
I
Yeah.
hope so too. But as we've seen in the past, sometimes when we read something, we don't take away. There's a little bit of our own wishful thinking injected, so we need more
Yeah.
detail there.
For sure.
Speaking of wishful thinking, I think this is the part that a lot of people have been waiting for, and our conversations keep bumping up against. Balance changes.
Oh,
So,
you want to talk about the series drop or no? We like.
Nah, so I was gonna just skip the series.
I mean,
drop.
we can see it on screen here. Some Orca, Atuma, M'Baku, Series 4 to 3. Zabu, Sauron, Shadow King, Shauna, Dazzler to Series 4. It's not really that exciting. Most
We
of these
talked
cards
to-
don't even see play.
We talked about this before in one of our conversations, but the rate with which cards are dropping from Series 4 to Series 3 is much slower than the
Yeah,
movement of
it's-
cards entering Series 5 or dropping to 4. So
Mhm.
the only thing that I think that we're all in agreement of is we would like to and hope that the cards will drop more frequently and in greater numbers.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's the hope, because it does just take this a bit too long. Like I don't think it takes too long for the Series 5s to go to 4, but 4 is still very inaccessible to a lot of the player base. Like I get so many comments from people on decks without any Series 5 cards, just with like a Series 4 or 2, and it's like, well, what can I replace with this? Because I don't have Bast, or I don't have Valkyrie. And it's like those are way more easy to acquire both via tokens and via opening them. So if that's still a bottleneck, it's like, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about these nerfs because
So speaking of expectations not being met, we were really, really, really excited for the balance change because of some of the limitations or issues with the technology. They had to issue the changes in a full patch and not over the air. And so this came to us last week. I would say that in the past, the balance updates were not generally controversial, although I'm probably forgetting about Leader. I think we have a lot to say, so let's just jump in. So Zombies, if you want to kind of take us through how they changed Thanos, we can then maybe have a discussion and then move on to the next card.
Okay, so Thanos got a direct nerf. He got buffed in the prior patch, which everyone thought was kind of a little eye-widening, because Thanos was the time that the last patch came, it was kind of clear they were a little bit behind the curve on where they were patching versus where the meta was going. So Thanos was just rising to popularity, and then they buffed him. So that was kind of funny.
You
But
don't
now
even play
he's
Thanos in the Thanos deck, right? Like
No,
the
that's
one
the thing.
attack even make a difference.
Like it was literally just pulling him out of Lockjaw, and now that he got buffed, you do play him more, which
Yeah.
was their intention, but he's still not the main part of the deck, which is kind of funny. But they last patch they buffed him from 8 to 11. Now they're reducing him back to 10. And we'll read the developer comment here. We increased Thanos' power in a previous patch that was built during a time when Zabu and Surfer were suppressing the success of Thanos-based decks. That's true. I tried to play Thanos during then. Didn't work very well. We're happy to keep him at 9+ power for Shang-Chi's sake, but given his recent success, we thought it was appropriate to pull back on that buff just a touch. This change won't dramatically impact the success of Thanos decks, as most of the strength is the stone interactions, which is true.
Dude, can I just say one thing? Like,
Mhm.
their data has got to be all screwed up, because it takes so long for players who are not in this like 1%, right, to be able to even acquire this card
and play with it, right? And that limits data.
If they're looking at their data and they're like, oh, Thanos isn't being played enough, we need to buff it. It's like, yeah, because by the time I finally got it, like it had been out for 3 months or whatever it had been, right?
It'd
2
been a
months
while,
or whatever. And it's like,
it came in, December when they launched the Series 5 cards? I think it was December.
I don't
if
remember.
I recall correctly.
Maybe November, late November, I think it was.
Yeah, late November, early December.
So just and not to use myself as an example, but players in general who are like medium to like, or whatever, like average engagement level, are not necessarily going to be cracking these cards on day one, and so it's going to take a month or two sometimes for the
day 100.
Right. Well, the data is going to take some time to catch up with them, right? And so how can you make meaningful balance changes to a card like based on data that's not necessarily accurate?
No, it's a
we've
great
seen things lag, and that's why when they buffed Thanos, a lot of players were left scratching their heads, because it already hit that inflection point where it was exponentially rising when they buffed it. And
it's the trickle down.
Yeah, it all comes a little bit slower, and like that's true in like all other card games where it starts at the top and trickles down, but it takes so much longer.
I don't want to say
trickle down.
And chat, I like the data. I don't want to say the data is not accurate. The data is accurate. It's just the perspective is flawed, right? Because
it's also more limited data too, right? Like it's not that it's necessarily inaccurate, but anytime you're working with like a smaller sample size versus a larger, right, it paints a different picture. Because sometimes the small sample size, it's not always inaccurate, but there's a higher chance of it not being as accurate as a larger sample, and we're kind of forced into that route, right?
If I could do sample size pools, like I do data analysis for work, right? If I do if I'm looking at data on all the pool 2 cards, like my data is going to be super accurate because everybody's got that stuff, right? And then as I creep into pool 3, like I have to take into account that not all the players are going to have these, and so my data set is like I've got data, but it's not going to apply to the same player base level, and that has got to rise incrementally as I go through pool 4 and pool 5. That like, okay, I'll have data, but you have to look at it with a grain of salt. So when they're making adjustments to cards in these higher tier levels, it's like, well, okay, but whatever.
I think it's fair to say that regardless of this Thanos buff and nerf, it was really inconsequential to the archetype, and it was the other changes that kind of changed.
All right, speaking of other changes, right? All right, here's the important change to Thanos. So the Space Stone now says it used to say on reveal next turn you can move one card at this location, draw a card, and now it says on reveal next turn you can move one card to this location, draw a card, and that's a significant change.
Just a quick note. You'll notice that Nate didn't make these Nerf graphics because they look awful. My apologies. They are functional, but they are.
I'll do it. I'll do
bare
it next
bones.
time, Blue. I'll do it next time.
Nah, you had enough to do this week,
No,
but
these are
it's
fun.
just in case you're wondering, this isn't up to Nate's typical standards because because he didn't do them. This is a big change, and it addresses the main complaint of the Lockjaw Thanos deck, where you could play Lockjaw, throw a bunch of stones into Lockjaw, pull out a bunch of crap. Next turn, move Lockjaw to the next lane and do it all over again. You can still do that, but it's a lot more limiting. You have to play the stone in the opposite lane, not into Lockjaw, and then when you move Lockjaw into that lane, you have one less slot. This is a good change. It also means that you can't move into locations like Sanctum Sanctorum and Plunder Castle.
That was a huge change because that was like you'd win games on that. If I'm playing Thanos and I saw a Plunder Castle or Sanctum Sanctorum, I was like, oh, sweet snap, because I know I can move into it and I don't have to worry about like,
It invalidated location restrictions both in the locations themselves and decks that tried to lock down a lane. Like you might notice post-patch, we're seeing a lot more of Storm and Professor X, and that's at least with Storm's case and Juggernaut. Like you don't have to worry about them just pulling into a lane you're trying to close down. And on top of that, the Lockjaw interaction, you could chuck the Space Stone in, get a big thing or get a few big things from your stones, and then pull Lockjaw somewhere else, and then do it all over again.
Play your Space Stone again because it goes back into your deck.
It was just too. It was very difficult, even at like a high level, to reasonably like predict exactly what they were going to do. And even if you could predict it, there wasn't really much you could do to interact with it. So it was. I think this was a really good change, and probably the one of the best changes in the patch, because it's taken Thanos down a significant way, especially in combined with the next change.
The scary piece though is if they bump Thanos down a notch, like okay fine, like I understand and that's okay, but now you have Shuri decks and like the two were kind of
Shuri.
neck and neck, right? And that's scary when you make an adjustment like this to one and not the other, because the nerf to Red Skull is like laughable. But
prior to this change, we were in a 2-deck meta. Post-change, stay tuned to find out how many decks are in this meta.
At the very top.
I do think that this was... I actually was surprised by this change. I thought that it could happen, but it was more likely that they were going to target Lockjaw. They did not. They targeted this one, and I think that this was a meaningful change.
Well,
and
they hit the deck twice though, and like the Thanos nerf, like we don't really care about, right? It's insignificant. The stone was a big change for us, but the other one that significantly changed this deck is Quinjet, right? Because that let the mana cheat, so I could slam all my stones for 0. And
so how did they?
So they gave it this like Sorcerer's Apprentice, right? Cannot reduce below 1, and so. Okay, now that means that we just don't run it in Thanos anymore, because what's the point?
It's a little sad that there was some collateral damage with this one. With there was like some of the Moon Girl Quinjet decks, the double She-Hulk. Although I'm not entirely sure how She-Hulk interacts with this. If she can still, I think she might be able to still get to 0 with this in play. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't played it, but. It's unfortunate there was some kind of collateral damage. Also, you can see it with like the demon bounce deck stuff, that some of those decks ran Quinjet to make 0 cost demons. You can't do that anymore.
You know what though? As a card game enthusiast, I will tell you that when cards cost 0, like it's kind of a problem. And was I like abusing that problem? Like absolutely yes, but for the long term like health of the game, when stuff costs 0, it's kind of problematic. So
so they said that in the dev comment, right? Like they said, part of this is for future cards. This was always going to be a design restriction, so that's part of the reason they're doing now. Oh, and I get it. I personally would have preferred if they just made it so the Thanos stones didn't count as not starting in the deck, and then if Quinjet was a problem later, dealing with it then, because it really wasn't problematic outside of the Thanos shell. But they said that seemed a bit too complex, which I don't necessarily agree with, but it is what it is. But I know quite a few people were kind of saddened about this change because Quinjet is a very enjoyed card, and it is this is the big thing that changed the deck, because now you can't as freely throw a bunch of stuff into your Lockjaw. It slowed the Thanos deck down a lot, and most people gave up on the Thanos deck with this change. Like the play rate fell off a cliff. It went to being like 18% to like 5%. Like people stopped getting their free wins. They stopped playing Thanos.
I tried so hard, like, because I was at rank 97 when this hit, right? And then the final couple levels of the climb was like, well, how do we make this deck work? And we tried swapping some things in and out, and it was like, better deck builders than me will sort it out. But I got frustrated with it because I was so used to playing it a certain way.
You were also getting very unlucky. The data suggests there are new builds being experimented with that cut Lockjaw that are very compelling, but Lockjaw is still good, and the data suggests that the best early change is taking out Quinjet and replacing it with Wasper armor. That's what Untapped says.
I was also like giga tilted,
rolling.
So
yeah, but you got really unlucky, and you were right before. I mean, there is you could get unlucky before with Lockjaw, and I mean it no matter what, not having the 0 cost cards, very significant. I declared Quinjet dead. Someone got very upset with me on Twitter and said, no, it's still good in Dino. And so I was curious, and it is. You can still make She-Hulk cost 0 with a Moon Girl copy and a turn 5 skip. You can make She-Hulk cost 0 with Quinjet still, but I mean, it's very specific. Quinjet goes from being a ubiquitous card to a niche player.
Yeah, it's a lot less good than it was before. I can definitely understand, this could have been a problem later down the road. I would have preferred they do it a little bit differently, but it's understandable why they did it the way they did, because it did have a very significant impact, and Thanos is now a lot less played. Though I think the bigger reason for that is people stopped getting their free wins. And also now you get more punished in the Thanos deck for making these small misplays that a lot of people weren't getting punished by because the stones are free. So a lot of people gave up on it, but I've seen a lot of the top players still using the Thanos deck, still working on refining the new best version of it. And I will not be surprised when he does the old Simpsons Moe's bar meme where he gets thrown out and he comes cranking right back in. It's just a matter of time, and that's fine. Like, I think Thanos should. I don't want them to nuke Thanos for more, but Thanos is a fun card. I think it's good that he has like a high tier deck. I think it's just underplayed right now relative to how good it is, because people don't know all the play lines anymore, and people don't know which version to go to. Whereas before, we figured it out, and it was known, hey, this is the best version of Thanos.
Yeah.
What's the deal with no pixel Quinjet on the screen there, Nate?
It was a mistake. I was trying to get cards that I could put big, and I just searched the wrong one. I actually am a pixel enjoyer.
I know. I retired my pixel Quinjet because I got a Bluprint one. So I couldn't say no.
It was my bad. But
so continuing on with the changes, so those were the hits to Space Stone
Thanos,
Quinjet.
Yeah, those are the Thanos hits. And then we have Shuri, and well, I mean, they did hit the Shuri deck, but they didn't do so nearly as hard as Thanos, unfortunately. So the first change here is with Red Skull. Red Skull went from being a 5/15 ongoing, enemy cards at this location have +2 power, to a 5/13 ongoing. Enemy cards at this location have +1 power.
Almost feels like a buff to me.
And they even say that kind of. This change is singularly aimed at reducing the strength of combining Red Skull with Shuri and Taskmaster. Outside of those interactions, this change is mostly a buff to the base case usage for Red Skull, giving you 9 to 10 power at crowded locations rather than 7 or 9. I mean, this was certainly a decision, and it really surprises me that they thought there was a very meaningful difference from two 30 power things and compared to two 26 power things, because that's essentially the difference that was made in terms of raw stats. Is now they're 26s instead of 30s, and I don't know about you guys, but when I was losing to Shuri, it wasn't usually by 4 power. And also at the same time, now the Red Skull doesn't even buff up the enemy stuff as much while only having this minor reduction. And it's clear like they don't want this to be, they want this to be a better card and not Shuri decks, but like I don't think like it just makes it better in Shuri. Like you're not seeing Red Skull pop up anywhere else. I mean, there's one other deck with him, which is like the Zoo deck with Dracula, but like it
Play rate
surprises
of
me.
Shuri Red Skull presently on ladder, based on the data we have, between 70 and 100, is approximately between 23 to 25%, depending on how you slice it. The next most played deck is maybe around a little under 5. So when you're playing on ladder right now, you need to either be playing Shuri Red Skull, or you better damn
be
well
targeting
have a
it, right?
good
Yeah.
plan for that deck. Whether it's moving their Cosmo around, or some other form of disruption. And one of the best
forms of disruption just got nerfed. Yeah.
got hit really
get
hard.
to that.
So
And that's why it's really baffling, right? So we can cover the She-Hulk one quickly, because She-Hulk is another technical nerf to the Shuri deck, but the She-Hulk was a very minor change that I don't think is. I mean, it's fine that they did it, because She-Hulk was seeing play in a ton of things. But She-Hulk went from a 6'10" to a 6'9".
That's a buff.
Nice.
And
nice.
by
Someone say nice.
Yeah. So, developer comment, She-Hulk is a key component in the strongest Shuri decks, sees widespread play in various decks thanks to its strength alongside Sunspot, Wave, and Moon Girl. We mostly think that's cool, but that she's more powerful than she needs to be for those combos. In addition, we want to encourage playing actively to locations rather than holding cards for explosive turn 6s. So we're continuing to weaken a few of the best cards for the latter. So they're like, yeah, She-Hulk, really, really good card. We don't want to make her not a good card, but we're going to just knock a point off the top. This actually reminds me of in beta, they did the same thing to Chavez. Chavez used to be a 6'10", and the other 6-drops are also weaker. And so Chavez was the only one that saw play because she has that deck thinning restriction, or not restriction, benefit as well. So they kind of bumped her down a little bit because it was already very powerful. It didn't need that extra stat. Seems they're doing the same to She-Hulk. I still play a lot of She-Hulk. A lot of other people do too.
She-Hulk's an amazing card. The one attack
I don't want
doesn't
them to nuke this card.
No,
right? Like, I'm happy that it is still, and it's also still in Shang-Chi range, which is important. So She-Hulk will go to 8. Eventually, not going to happen.
You guys remember? You guys remember with the Hearthstone balance changes that Ixar always would joke like buff secret mage, right?
Yeah.
I just like throw out there, hey, Ben Brode is a Shuri player, okay?
Yeah, right.
If Ben Brode, if you happen to be listening, Nate Wolf just called you out as being a Shuri player.
I mean,
now, you've got 2 ways of answering.
I'm also a Shuri player, so I mean, but
details. You have 2 ways to answer this charge. 1, you could gut the deck, or 2, you could come on here personally to rebuke Nate.
Oh, I'd take that.
Either option is acceptable.
Yeah, well,
our people will get connected.
There's not much to say about She-Hulk. She still sees a lot of play. It's still a good
still
card.
Very good card.
A minor adjustment to a card that was going in like a lot of decks.
It's
fine. It's whatever. It doesn't hit Shuri very hard at all. Oh boy, instead of 20 power, she's 18. That's a huge difference. Much like the 4 power with the Red Skull, right? The next change we have here is one
I'm gonna start crying.
I am very passionate about, and I read these patch notes live without like pre-screening them for the video, and
we have to bleep
if you want a really raw reaction, you can go see that because I had some words. that we'll avoid to keep this more PG. But Arrow went from a 5/7 on reveal, move all enemy cards played this turn to this location, to a 5/8. On reveal, move the last enemy card played this turn to this location. Let's hear their reasoning for this. Developer comments. Arrow is a tricky card for us. The actual game balance for Arrow has been healthy, and she fulfills a vital role in our game by providing interaction, especially against dangerous polarizing cards like Galactus. It's important for Arrow to be versatile and strong in order to be a widely playable tech card. We don't want her pushing the majority of other 5 cards out of decks. Unfortunately, that's the behavior we're seeing. Arrow can be frustrating to see, denying players the option to play their own endgames. This change seeks to keep Arrow strong where she's needed, foster more competition among 5-cost cards, and add counterplay to make her more fun to play against. This is, I could sum up like this whole comment in one letter, and that letter is L. This is a awful change. I think this is actually one of the worst changes they've ever made. And that's not because Arrow didn't need a change. I can see the argument for why she was too popular, she was too played, and it could be frustrating to play against. But this Arrow was the glue holding together the one way we had to interact with the Shuri deck when they had their protection up, their armor, and their Cosmo. Arrow was the one way to pull their stuff into the one lane and punish them for trying to do such a linear game plan where we knew what they were doing, but we couldn't interact with it with Shang-Chi because they have protection. So Arrow was the thing that was helping stop that, and they hit her so hard with this change. And it's really baffling to me. If this is the direction they wanted to go with the card, they made it the last enemy card instead of the first one. Because with this change, now when the Shuri deck goes to do their final play of Taskmaster into 1-drop, you pull the 1-drop instead of the Taskmaster.
Right?
And
right. Like,
so,
and you know they have it because they're sitting on Titania and they're sitting on
zero,
and it's like
it's they almost always have one drop sitting around in hand for that final turn with the Taskmaster. And so it just blows my mind that if this is the direction they wanted to take the card, which I don't like at all to begin with, that they'd make it the last card instead
just
of
make
the
it the
first
first.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really confusing that this is the way they wanted to go with it. And the other thing that really bugs me about this change is they're like, oh, we want more 5-drops to be playable. But I don't really think Arrow is going to like nerfing Arrow isn't necessarily going to make more 5-drops playable. I think people are just not going to be playing 5-drops much because a lot of the other ones don't really compete with the stuff going around. And so it feels crazy to me that they did such a significant nerf on the main piece of interaction we had to help deal with the Shuri stuff while not taking that same approach to the Shuri deck herself. And I talked about this like quite a few times before it happened, saying, man, if they make the mistake of significantly hitting Arrow without significantly hitting Shuri, it's going to be really, really bad. And, 5 days after the change, we're seeing that come to fruition. Because, yeah, sure, the Shuri deck had Arrow in it, but the Shuri deck got more of a buff from this Arrow change than it got nerfed by getting some of its cards changed.
Most people just slapped in Vision and called it a day.
Exactly. And the other thing that really frustrated me about this change is they looked at the numbers and they were like, all right, Arrow's showing up in too many places. It's not good. We need to make a change. But the thing
it's
is,
the old Hearthstone mentality. Oh, this card's seeing too much play. Let's make it worse.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing that frustrates me is it ignores the general direction the game has trended in, which has resulted in Arrow seeing a lot more play. And that direction has been decks that slam big cards on the table have become the more dominant decks. So it's over time, it has changed to where there used to be a bit more variety in terms of going wide. We saw that in the Surfer meta and the Zavu meta. Where was Arrow in that meta? not around very much because both Surfer and Zabu filled out their board more. So Arrow, having priority with Arrow oftentimes was not enough to win you a game in those metas
Yeah.
because they filled up their boards. So they already had 2 or 3 things in a lane. So pulling with Arrow wasn't a game-winning play because you're pulling 1 card.
Maybe,
So
maybe we try
Yeah, go on.
Thanos like ongoing zoo instead of.
Well,
like-
funny you say
There's-
that, Nate. Not very good, both according to stats on Untapped and my own play experience, where I basically fell from 107 to 104, attempting to make the deck work. It's just not good enough.
I tried it
because-
as well, and I kind of came to the same conclusion. But that's the
Yeah,
that's
it
the only
doesn't
real
seem like that way.
counterplay, right? Is like or the when you would invalidate the arrow, right? Is you play a zoo deck, so you fill up all the lanes, and there's nothing to move.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing that's frustrating to me is I feel like they aren't acknowledging that these go wide decks aren't as viable. And like, yeah, they can still do all right and whatnot, but especially in the last meta, they just weren't around at all after the nerfs to Surfer and Zabu. And it feels like Arrow's becoming the big target here for a thing that's not really it's not really Arrow's fault that they've been pushing the game in a direction of slam the biggest thing you can, because she wasn't as popular in these other metas where that wasn't like not every deck had that game plan, so she wasn't as good against every deck. And then even if she's good against your deck, you still see her less often because she's not as good against other decks, so she becomes much less of a high played card and not as much of a like ubiquitous you put Arrow in every deck because Arrow is good. It's more of a commentary on like the state of the kind of direction of the meta and where the game has been going with the more recent cards that have released in the last couple months. And it's just frustrating to see them like not really acknowledge that and be like, and not, it feels like they either know and don't care about this direction or it's intentional, or they didn't realize that that's one of the reasons why Arrow became so popular because all these other decks are not flooding the board and they're just playing big things that lose to Arrow when they're playing from behind. And so it's just very strange to me that this is the direction they went with the card. And I think it's been I'm not going to say universally, but I will say I've seen way more people not happy with this change than like the 5 people who are happy with it. Even people who thought Arrow was too good have been
Yeah.
like, this is a bit much. Like,
They murdered Arrow. And this also kind of underscores a pattern that we see. And this was unfortunately somewhat corroborated by comments that one of the game designers made on the official Discord, which is part of the reason why they didn't go after certain cards was because they don't want people to feel bad about the purchases they made in Shuri. You know, and a card like Arrow, which has been, you know, almost evergreen pool 3, they tend to be a little bit less concerned about.
Well, now they're
hitting
giving
it
away
really
for
hard.
free now, right? That's the argument.
Well, it's not the argument, but I mean, it goes into the calculation, you know, the calculus. They don't want, like, so think of it like this, all right?
No, yeah.
If they gut Thanos, right? Let's say they gut Thanos because
That's my
he was
6,000
OP.
tokens.
Oh, I just paid 6,000 tokens. There are no refunds. And even if there were refunds, you have collateral damage from other cards that go with it. You know, so for example, if they nuked Shuri, well, what about the Red Skull that I invested in Taskmaster? Although you can't invest in those cards anymore, you kind of get my point. So, you know, there's this trend where they're willing to hit certain cards harder than others because they are not only taking the game balance into account, they're taking into account the acquisition and collection system. And, you know, I don't want to reopen that Pandora's box. We spoke about all the problems that are with that, things that we don't like. But now that it's seeped into balance, it kind of stings a little bit. And I think
it stings
that
much more seeing
Yeah.
that. And I really didn't like the response they gave about this because like anyone who knows my time with Snap and Hearthstone, I'm not someone who's generally in favor of a card getting like nuked from orbit. Like I think it is, especially in a game with a smaller card pool, it's good to have cards continue to see play, to not delete archetypes and whatnot. But the thing is, like, we're not asking them to delete the Shuri deck from existence. We're asking them to tune it down to a reasonable level where it's not by far the best deck in the game. And unfortunately, with this change, the changes they made between the being light with how they touch the Shuri deck and being heavy with how they hit arrow, it essentially Shuri came out not only neutral, not only unscathed, but actually being better positioned because the card that helped counter her in arrow and the matchup, the one big matchup that was unfavorable, which it was confirmed by the developers as unfavorable, was Thanos Lockjaw. And
Yeah.
now Thanos is not favorable into Shuri, it feels like, and at least the old version, the Lockjaw version of the
There
deck
are
is
newer ones which might be, but they're experimental. They're tough to pilot, and frankly, it's difficult to say if it
the
really
boat's still
is
out,
or
or the vote's still
yeah.
out on
Will
that
it?
one.
You know, like if Lambie and KM play a version that's favorable, it may very well be, but will it be favorable when I pilot it?
Yeah,
Stay tuned.
so that's, and there is one more nerf here, so we want to cover that too, because there was one more nerf to the Shuri deck, but it's again a pretty minor change, though I do think this was actually a good change, but not nearly enough to actually take the deck down a peg, which is, and this is applying to more than just one card, but there really is one main relevant card here: Mystique, Absorbing Man, and Taskmaster. These cards now require the previously played card to be in play in order to copy its attributes. And they updated the text to reflect that. Not going to read them all, but essentially before, if your opponent had a big thing and you Shang-Chi'd their big thing, even if it was dead, Taskmaster could copy it from the grave. That can no longer happen. The same is true with Mystique and Absorbing Man for the effects that they copy. So the card actually needs to be in play. Now, this, I think, was a good change and kind of an intuitive change, because I always thought it was kind of weird. You can copy a thing that isn't even around anymore. And while this is a slight nerf to the Shuri deck, it's not really that relevant a lot of the time, because most of the time they have a form of protection.
Well, they've got their
Like,
Cosmo and their armor, right?
yeah, exactly.
But-
So most of the time it hasn't really been relevant. Of course, there will be a handful of times it is relevant, but it's not relevant enough to take the deck down a peg. So while the change is not a bad change, it's not enough to make a significant impact. The comments on this. Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say I didn't know about this until I was playing earlier. It was yesterday or today, and they had played their gigantic red skull, and I had priority, and I Shang-Chi'd the red skull, and Taskmaster popped up and was a 0, and I just was cackling. It was
kind of funny when it happens.
It's pretty funny. It doesn't happen very often.
No, it doesn't. That's the shame. The adjustment is part balance, part matching expectations. A meaningful chunk of Taskmaster's strength in Shuri decks is his ability to copy a card's power, even if it's been destroyed by Shang or something else, an interaction that somewhat often gets reported as a bug. So that's kind of the unintuitive thing, right? Like, people are thinking it's not working how it's supposed to. If they're reporting it as a bug. Hopefully this change weakens Shuri decks slightly and more cleanly matches players' intuition when they see these cards for the first time. As we're seeing, I mean, Slightly's doing a lot of heavy lifting there, because it is the slightest of it really just didn't nerf the Shuri deck very much, and we're seeing that as a very clear picture now. That, I mean, I watched a tournament today. Can you guess what the finalist decks were? Any guesses? What,
3/4 of them were Shuri Red Skull.
yeah.
And like I said when we started this section, we went from a 2-deck meta to a 1-deck I don't want to call it a 1-deck meta, but
There's one
really,
deck above everything else, right? Like,
Yeah,
it's not that you can't win with other things. You can. People have, and there are ways you can target the Shuri deck a little bit, but there's nothing consistent enough, and especially if you don't have access to all or most of the cards, it gets even harder. Like, I was having some success using the new card that came out the other week, because, oh man, if you have priority and you play Negasonic and they play their big red skull in that lane, it goes boom, and then you're really happy. But guess what? Like 2 people have the card. So even if they print a card that helps against, it can't meaningfully impact the meta because nobody has it. And by the time people get it, there'll probably be more changes. So it won't matter. And it's like, it's such a, like, they can't rely on new cards to answer the problem because their player base isn't going to have them in a meaningful time frame. And it was just very, like, this is the first change. I've had a lot of faith in the different balancing things they've done, even if I didn't necessarily agree with every single decision. I really respected how they went about the Zabu and Surfer nerfs, how I thought they were actually going to drag their feet with that a lot because they were season pass cards, and that's a pretty big threat to the income if people no longer feel secure in buying their season pass cards because they might get nerfed. But I really loved how they handled that, and I felt like they didn't treat us with kid gloves with that, and they defended their decision and made it clear why they were doing what they were doing for the health of the game. And frankly, to me, it feels like 2 different groups of people made that decision versus this decision regarding balance updates. Like it feels so different. And they have said, hey, yeah, we can. Part of the reason we were lighter with the Shuri stuff is because we can continue to adjust it over the air now. So if Shuri's too good, maybe we can take some more points off of the Red Skull, and we don't have to wait another 3 weeks for a patch to do that. They can do that. And they have come out and said, someone asked the other day, they asked, hey, what are the thoughts about how things are going post-patch? And Shuri, the patch hasn't been received well by a lot of players. What are your plans to respond to this? And let me pull up the exact response here. Still monitoring the effects of the patch, and it's only a 2-day sample, but there has been some meaningful shifts. Admittedly, maybe not as much as we would have liked, but we'll review that next week once we have a couple more days of play to examine. So obviously, you do need time to see how things go, but even here, it sounds like they're like, yeah, it's not going as good as we thought it was going to go with the Shuri deck, and they're going to have to do more because it's just not working very well. But I do think it really did damage a lot of people's faith here because we think about this where we're going into this is the 3rd week of the season. There's really only another week.
We're going into the 4th week.
Going into the 4th week of the season. So there's only 1 week left. And maybe they ship some over-the-air change that makes it better, but the majority of this season was essentially just lost to Thanos, Lockjaw, and Shuri. And a lot of players are really counting on them to make a significant amount of changes here to prevent that from eating the whole season. How many times have you seen people experimenting with Nimrod this season? Not a whole lot. You see a handful of them.
The first 2 days, and the handful of people that are brave enough to play Galactus and throw it in that deck.
Or if they're already infinite and don't care about losing with it. But compared to the past seasons, even with another kind of middling card like MODOK that wasn't super OP, that saw so much more play because we were in more of an open meta thing. There wasn't a clear best top deck right away. And it let the card breathe a bit after Zabu and Surfer got nerfed, and we just didn't get that at all with Nimrod this season. And I think it's bad for the player experience, and it's also bad for them on the financial side because why? I mean, yeah, the pass has other things you might want, and that you can justify it with. But people who are just buying the pass to get the card, it's not that Nimrod's not a good card. It's just that he can't thrive in a meta where these are the top 2 decks, or now where Shuri is the top 1 deck. It's just between the armor and the Cosmo, you're gonna have a bad time with Nimrod a lot of the time, which sucks because I was really excited about the card. I think it's a neat design, it's fun to play with, but you don't really see too much of it, or when you do see it, it is it just doesn't really do that impressive stuff. And on top of it, one of the things that makes Shuri very frustrating to go against is it's very linear what they're doing. And I think the frustration doesn't come from it being a linear deck. The frustration comes with it from being a linear deck that is hard to interact with. And even though it might be the correct decision to retreat more against it, when you're seeing it so much that you're having to do these constant retreats, it makes for a really bad experience when I know exactly what they're going to do and I can't do anything to stop it. I think that's kind of worse for a lot of players than not knowing what they're going to do. Because it feels like you're a bit helpless against that if just because they drew their cards in the right order, more than like any other deck in the game. And it's rough out there. It's a Shuri world. We're just living in it. And it's especially true in the 80 to 100 bracket where people are trying to push to infinite. Like at infinite, you definitely see less of it because there's less reason to be competing for the ranks. So people are more freely trying out other stuff.
There's no
and
stakes,
there are
right?
ways, yeah. And there are ways you can target the Shuri deck. It's not impossible to target, but even doing that, it doesn't seem like it's enough to actually bring it down in play rate by a meaningful amount. So it's like, did things get better with the patch? Yeah, it's like I think I'm getting leeched a lot less because there are less people on Thanos, so that's an improvement. But in terms of like going up against the Shuri deck and the popularity and power of it, it doesn't feel better to play against. It doesn't feel like I have more agency over the deck. And it feels like I actually have less agency than ever because of the way they decided to be pretty heavy-handed with their change to Arrow, who coincidentally is a pool 3 card, so they don't mind being as heavy-handed with it as opposed to a pool 4 or pool 5 card, which is really I just think that's not good. I think
You sound
balance
so
should be
reasonable,
balance.
zombies.
Like it's so well. It's because I got all my frustrations out like 2 days ago.
I
'cause
love your
was
videos. I
very
need to
mad.
go. I need to watch it.
This one was spicy.
I will
Oh,
say
yeah.
congrats on your steampunk variant pulls, by the way.
Oh yeah, and that's something we talked about it last episode. But the steampunk variant stuff is live, and they're cool. I saved up boxes for like a month, and I got the steampunk stuff. And I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I certainly like them. And it was I like the variant rush thing. I think it's cool that they add some new variants that you can get for like a limited time through. I mean,
Did you-
it's an event, but it's not really an event.
Did
It's just like
you did you all pull any?
No, but
Did you get
I've.
any, Lee?
I got 4 out of the 5.
Oh wow.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
Oh,
pretty
good.
good.
And I
What
only
about
had
you, Blue? Did you get
28
any?
boxes.
I got two. Nate got to witness me pulling my first one. It was really fun. I pulled cereballs. We got a good laugh out of that. It was fun. Like I don't like the steampunk variant, but like it's still funny. I also got the yellow jacket one, which is pretty cool.
I like that one.
I like
I
that one a
don't
lot.
That one is
I don't
nice.
hate them. I don't think I'll use them, but it's nice to see them pop up. I like the event idea. It's fun. I like it.
They doubled the drop rate too, so you
Yeah.
might notice that these are a bit more frequent than you were seeing the winter ones show up in the last one. So they did double the chance that basically when you roll a cosmetic box, the chance of you getting one of the variant rush variants is twice as much as it was the last time around. So, but there definitely is variance to it because I asked people to let me know in the comments what their experience was. And I've seen some people get all of them in less boxes than I did. I've seen some people open almost as many and not get nearly as many. So it definitely seems like there's a lot of variance to it.
There is. Yeah.
But it's generally been, I think, a positive thing, and I look forward to seeing more variant rush stuff in the future. I know people really like those winter Wonderland ones, and
I like
with
them, yeah.
Those were
with one of the upcoming cards in May, it looks like there may be an actual use for my Snowman Abomination. So I'm pretty happy about that because he's in all these Christmas lights and he has a little snowman and a hat.
Oh,
And
cute.
I liked to play with him in like Patriot, but he was even bad in Patriot, and I was like, oh, what are the odds this card ever ends up being used? But and we're not going to talk about this time. I'm going to save some things for next episode. But
Yeah, we were busting at the seams for content today. Just on the Arrow thing really quickly though,
Yeah.
there's one person here who may not be as aggrieved as us that Arrow took a bit of a hit.
Oh yeah,
And that is our resident Galactus gamer, LeeAcer. So if you felt that post Arrow, the deck's a little bit less, a little more playable, or
it
how does
depends the
that feel?
Galactus. It depends the Galactus deck that I play. If it's kind of just like the linear one where you're just ramping up and then getting Galactus out, then yes, because they can pull it into a lane that already have cards set up or whatever it is. But overall, like this month has been terrible to play Galactus, so I haven't played a ton of it. Whereas last month, I absolutely cruised like there was no tomorrow, and the difference is just so like I'm gobsmacked at it.
It's a
We had a
totally different
little.
experience, right? Like I watched you play a bunch of Galactus last month,
Yeah,
and
you could see how I was just sailing and cruising, and like it was not to make it sound like it's some easy thing, but it was easy. It felt easy, at least a lot
You
easier
were
than
you were winning more than you were losing, both
yeah.
in cubes and even win rate. Um,
I had a not too bad time early in the month, and then post Infinite with the Sandman ramp, just because if you can get out Electro and then the Sandman, because both players now can only play one card per turn, now your arrow works as intended.
yeah, so Arrow's
Mhm.
good with Sandman, Arrow's good with Wave for the same reason. It's just become very narrow in terms of its
Yeah.
application,
Yeah. It's
which is why they gave it, they moved it to an 8.
yeah, because they felt guilty. Oh,
They felt the deep sense of guilt, so they made her an 8. Hey,
yeah,
could it be worse? They could have made her a 9.
and they yeah, right, so she's in Shang-Chi range, and someone is asking about it, and they're like, well, if we feel like Arrow isn't doing the role we need her to do, we'll consider another change. But I mean, they've said that before in the past, and I'm not holding my breath on that one. But they were basically like, yeah, we want her more to be like a big Polaris than this like instant win condition.
yeah, but we already have
But
Magneto for that. Like,
I
Yeah,
know
Magneto's the big Polaris, both literally and
exactly.
figuratively. Like,
It just strikes me as a really weird change, and to me it felt kind of tone deaf that they're looking more so at the numbers rather than the overall context of why those numbers are so high. And I think that if we could have more of these go wide strategies, Arrow wouldn't be as universally good, so her play rate would go down to a more acceptable level. Now, maybe there was some room for tweaks there still. I just think this is a very heavy-handed change, and it becomes all the more baffling when you see how light they were on Shuri, and it leaves this kind of bad taste of, oh, they're fine with being a bit more aggressive, nerfing the quote-unquote free cards in Pool 3, but the Pool 4 and Pool 5 cards, they deserve a little bit more
so what
light
you're
padding.
trying to tell me then is that Cosmos Canyon should be ejected from the game, and Killmonger should now cost 6 instead of 3. Got it.
Yeah, yep, exactly. It's just,
I mean, all of that though, just again speaks to their whole collection system, right? So,
yeah,
Yeah.
and
it's a
that's like the
huge.
fundamental thing. That's
Mhm.
kind of like, that's the thing that I know they kind of want to go all in on it, but it's something I think they need to look at.
Yeah,
So,
and I mean, they do say they listen to the feedback and they want to continually improve it, but unfortunately, I think that moves at a pace that is not really up to
yeah.
speed with what the more engaged players want.
Hmm.
If it's good enough for casuals, it's always hard to know because casuals don't typically engage with the content created surrounding the game. That's why they're a more casual player. But Blue brought up before, and I've seen a similar experience with people who just downloaded it as like a fun mobile game, and then when they got to Pool 3 and the card acquisition slowed, they kind of fell off a cliff because they weren't they didn't feel like it
yeah,
was as
you run out of
exciting as
steam.
Yeah,
when
no, I
you
mean,
started out.
I saw a lot of people on Twitter saying that this is a card collection game first and a card game second.
Yeah,
So,
and I feel like the Marvel IP definitely has brought in a lot of newer people who haven't played card games before, and that's
mhm.
something different I've seen with this game is where when I ask someone who has played another card game a lot how they feel about the game, generally the response is, I love the gameplay. I'm not really a big fan of the collection system.
Mhm.
But people who haven't played a card game before, they're just like, oh, this is just like kind of another mobile game. It's just like a character collecting game. And like there's not really a wrong way to view the game, if that's the way you view it and you enjoy it, more power to you, but it makes it incredibly frustrating as someone who enjoys the card game aspect and wants other people to be able to enjoy it, that there's so much limitation and lack of agency. And it gets even stranger when it's like people are like, well, it's not supposed to be a competitive game. You shouldn't do it competitively. Well, then give us a freaking casual mode that's not competitive. Like, if you don't want it to be a competitive game, don't make it a competitive game.
The latter is such a
You know how terrifying it is to have to do your daily quests in a ranked system
when you're high up,
when you're
and
at rank 98. Like,
it's
the
stressful.
ladder is very competitive, very sweaty, very grindy.
Absolutely.
And it's not there's a little bit of a disconnect there. But
I do want to give a shout out to our former guest and friend of the show, Binks, who hit Infinite for the first time this month.
Oh,
and
sweet! All right, congrats, Binks.
He said something the other day. I was watching him when he was like in the 90s, and he even brought it up. And
he was like, "Wow, this sucks."
Point.
No, I'm just joking. What did he say? What did he say?
No,
that sounds like Binks.
what he said was, so when he hit 90 and then it gave him the boost to 95, he was like, I can literally feel like the ladder anxiety creeping in. And he's like one of the main people who I mean, he did that great video talking about like, hey, I've never hit Infinite before, and that's okay. And I thought that was a great like discussion and whatnot.
Yeah.
And was a positive message. But he was even like, I feel that creeping in and I hate it, but like, it's so hard to not have that feeling, even when you're like consciously aware of it and trying to not feel that way or react that way. It just it does it to you. Like you just want it. You're like, oh, I'm so close, but if then I could fall back down. And it really does. I think this game is crazier ladder anxiety than I've ever seen in any other game. And then combining the cube system with that, the cube system kind of encourages a gambler's fallacy in a way, where you start playing the game and let's say you're down. I've seen this happen with a few other people. It's happened to me before. Let's say you start at 95 and you're playing for like an hour or 2 hours and you're at 93 and you're like, well, damn, I'm 2 ranks down. I've lost all these cubes and I've been playing for a while.
I need to make it back up.
Yeah. Like, you don't want to stop there, because then your playtime had a net negative impact.
Yeah.
Like, you would have been better not playing at all, is what it feels like. And so you're like, all right, I've got to at least get my cubes back so I can at least, get to where I was, and then I'll call it break even. I just got to win once on the slot machine to make all the money I've spent back. Right? Like, I just need, 1 or 2 more 8 cube games, and then I'm good.
It's like those guys who play blackjack lose $1,000 and like, okay, well, if I double my bets now, I can break even and go home.
Yeah, eventually it'll work out.
Yeah, exactly.
And I won't lose.
Keep gambling.
Yeah. But it's so it gets you caught in this trap of, I want to at least have made progress or not lost progress, so I'll keep going. And then that plays into when you don't get those wins you're looking for, or worse, if you get bigger losses.
Oh,
that
then you're
plays
on tilt.
into the tilt factor. And this game punishes tilt really, really hard, especially with no ranked floors outside of Infinite. So like, tilting is really, really bad in this game, because you start playing worse and you start snapping more aggressively to try and get the cubes back, and then you start losing more cubes, and it's just, you start to spiral down. And the best move in that situation is to walk away. But a lot of people, even when you know about it, it's hard to pull yourself away, especially if you're like, I like playing the game. I'd like to continue playing the game. But sometimes it's smarter to walk away and come back to it a little bit later, because like, you'll probably be playing better when you're not on that frustration of, I just lost like 2 8-cubers, and thinking how long it's going to take to get all that progress back. And
because the games are so short, it's so easy to say one more game.
Yeah,
just one more game, just one more.
Yep.
And it is so dangerous. And I have experienced that firsthand as well. And it's difficult to step away.
Yeah, especially when you're like, you're generally enjoying your time with the game. It's just it's frustrating that you feel like you've made negative progress in your climb, because if your goal is infinite for that month, you're gonna have to get those cubes back at some point if you want to get there.
Oh, man.
It's inevitable. So it feels like you're falling down the hill and you're just gonna have to climb back up.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, it is. I will say though, the 5 bonus thing is pretty nice. Like I found the climb to be frustrating this month, even though I did it relatively earlier on. I wouldn't have done it as quickly without that, and I was really frustrated by the amount of just 1 to 2 cube games because of all the uncertainty going on in like the 2-deck meta, and the how much RNG was in the meta. It really feels like people, and also, players have gotten better over time. That's another factor too, but I don't think it's the main factor influencing this, because players were better a month or 2 ago, and we didn't see the same level of few snaps. I really do think this meta has really been one of, if not the most, where where people hold back on their snapping because there's so much uncertainty.
Oh yeah.
Well, we have been going now for over 3 hours. We knew today was going to be a big one, because there was just so much to talk about. But I propose we end it there. Perhaps this is a symptom of us only meeting twice a month when there's
so much to talk about.
Yeah, so much happening in the game. So I think that this might be something to keep an eye on to see if the cadence makes sense. I'd like to think that but one thing that is true about Marvel Snap is that they are moving quickly. Think about balance changes this month and the blog post and everything else.
The tournament mode, like what people have been asking for a tournament mode in Hearthstone for like 9 years, and this game is it's been out for almost half a year, and we're already gonna have one of those.
Let them release it, and then we'll see what.
Yeah, I know.
Really think about it.
I'm surprised they're actually doing it that quickly at all. It's something I very much wanted, and I'm super as someone who has a bit more of a as someone who has more of a a competitively minded focus while also liking doing variety and stuff, and especially creating content about the game. I was so stoked on battle mode, and I was so sad when I saw the reception to it was less than great, because even though people liked it, not enough people could participate in it, so they weren't really interested. It's much like we talked about with getting new cards, right? People aren't going to watch something that they can't easily do themselves. So I think this is going to be a huge plus for the game and giving players another way to play. People who are more competitive have something else to kind of grind towards. It's a whole different format of playing the game. I think it's just that was the thing that really stood out to me, is wow, I'm very excited. I'm very, very excited to try out the battle mode, see how that goes, and I do kind of hope that maybe naively that first section of the conquest mode can be a pseudo casual, more casual mode, where if you can just kind of enter into it whenever, people won't feel like they have to play the strongest of the strong things, because they're not in the silver tier or the gold tier or the infinite tier. They're just at the low one. They can kind of play what they want and have some fun in battle mode without having to have a direct friend to message and get all set up with. I just wanted something more positive to end on.
This is where I'd say wiser words were never spoken.
Talk about,
this is where you either say wiser words that never been spoken, or you play some bumper from the soundboard.
Yeah.
Before
Enough
we
said, bub.
Oh, that's a good one. There you go. So just before we wrap, let's do the contact info thing. Let's start with our good friend Lee, which was kind enough to sit through our ramblings for the last 3 hours. Where can people find you online and engage with you if they want to learn more about your content, Lee?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at _LeeAcer _. Funny enough, someone actually took my name, so that's why there's underscores, if you're wondering.
Rude.
The nerve.
And you can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/LeeAcer. I'm streaming right now 4 days a week. Sometimes I do a couple of weekend streams here and there, but generally start around 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I'm always playing Snap now.
And they're good streams. I've been finding myself watching quite a bit since you've made the switch. I enjoy the time slot and the content, so I would recommend that
you. I really
y'all check it
appreciate
out.
that.
I'm not just saying that. I am genuinely there watching, so I suggest y'all do the same.
Yes, I'm a fan.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Absolutely.
It's
So
I love your stream time because it's usually a bit before I end up going on, so I get to kind of work on some stuff on the side while hanging out in chat, and then I usually start up right as you're ending, which is
which is
very
convenient.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really funny because when you start up, I'm the one then working till like 3, 4 in the morning on edits. While you're
Yeah, right.
streaming.
It's the life.
really
We know it well. Content creation struggle.
So speaking of that content creation struggle, where can people find you, Mr. Zombies?
Yeah, you can find me over on the Twitters, ZombiesGoNomNom. YouTube's the same thing. Twitch is pretty much the same, but I ran into the same problem as Lee. My name, I think, was originally taken on Twitch, so it's Zombies with a Z. I think I actually took that years and years ago, back when Twitch was just in TV, but I got locked out. Maybe if I make partner someday, they'd let you change it, but for now, it's Zombies with a Z. Go nom nom on Twitch. Doing pretty regular streams again. I took a little bit of time off during this meta to focus on the YouTube stuff, and still doing daily YouTube stuff. A lot of fun stuff over there. Gameplay. I also try and focus on a lot of news related stuff around the game, and I did a lore video, which is turning into
More,
a series.
please. More, please.
It was on
That was
Arrow.
excellent.
Sadly, I guess the last
What
minute
timing?
of that.
Timing you
Yeah,
had
I
there.
know. The last minute of it is now technically inaccurate, where I go over what Arrow does in Snap. But if you
Rip.
want to learn more about the character, they decided to hit pretty hard with the Nerf bat. You can check that out. I got a lot of positive reception for it, and it was one of my favorite things I've ever worked on. So I'm looking forward to bring some more lore of the unknown Snap characters to the people.
Very nice. Yeah, I really enjoy the lore videos particularly.
They're fun.
It was good, Mr. Nate.
Yeah,
People
thank you.
find
I'm
you.
always excited to be here. So if you guys are interested in following my content, I'm playing Snap as well, but first and foremost, primarily a Wild Hearthstone player. We run a Wild Hearthstone podcast called Born to Be Wild, which is kind of where the Born to Be Cosmo name jokingly spun out of. You can find me on Twitter at NateWolfeTCG. It's NateWolfeTCG. We do the Wild podcast every Friday evening here at this channel. It's twitch.tv/born2bewildhs. Every Friday evening, we've got content that posts then to YouTube the next day. We're doing a Wild tournament series as well. And the videos for that, they're all cast, streamed matches and stuff, like esports style. And those are all up on YouTube. That we do them live on Twitch and then post them to YouTube. And then doing the Cosmo podcast as well. All the stuff, if you're interested in Wild Hearthstone, check us out. The easiest way is going to the website. It's born2bewildhs.com, and you can find me there. But I really enjoy hanging out with you guys, and especially as a newer player. I mean, I'm happy to have joined the infinite ranks, and I don't know that I could have done it without your kind of guidance and inspiration and stuff. And so I really appreciate having friends kind of boost me. But it's been a fun time hanging out with y'all, and I really appreciate it. It's so much fun hanging out with everybody and doing this thing. So thank you much. Blutrane, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at twitter.com/Blutrane, BLUTRANE. You'll be shocked to hear this, but nobody had the Twitter that I wanted, so or that I wanted to register for, so there it is. Actually, that's not true. The reason
What
why
did
there's
you
no
want?
E. Well, back in the day, I wanted Blue, BLUETRANE, and I don't remember what site it was. It was taken, so I cut the E out, and that kind of just stuck. So I've been able to register my name everywhere. You can also interact with me on the Born to Be Wild Discord, which, even if you're not interested in wild content, I would still recommend checking it out. because there is a fairly active Snap section where you can interact with all of us. We're all pretty active on there, and there's a group of extended people, including some folks you might recognize from Ladder.
And Safety Blade joined up. That was great.
Yeah, Safety Blade's there, Pigpen's there, tons of other people that you've probably interacted with. So it's a good spot. I like it. There aren't many Snap Discords that I interact with. Technically, it's in a Snap Discord, but it's one of the places that I'm active in discussing Snap. So you should definitely check that out. And finally, just want to thank the Born to Be Wild podcast and those who are involved with that. As Nate said, without them, this would not exist. And happy to have the privilege to share this space with yourself, Nate, and Electra Sheep City and Hydralisk, who, while not super engaged with Snap at the moment, are still wonderful friends and people. And it's nice that we're able to kind of piggyback off of your framework to be able to put out the show twice monthly. So thank you.
Absolutely. Oh, it's super fun. Great episode, you guys. Well, we did it. It took 3 hours, but we got it done.
Yeah, man, we're gonna have to edit. I have to do more editing. I knew it was gonna be long, but I think there was much to say, and I think we said it. And I'm happy that we were able to communicate it in the manner that we did. While we love the game, we certainly think that there's areas that can be improved, and we spare powder for no one, and we will praise where due. And hopefully that resonated with you, the audience.
Yep.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself.
All right, now I'll play the bumper.
Enough said, bub.
That's great.
Hey, he's Canadian too.
Yeah.
Yes.
What? Yes.
He's my cousin.
There we go.